thank that weather forecast, and we will keep those gray skies. We'll just keep that shower and rain word out of any type of talk and keep our fingers crossed that all this weather holds off today. But a bit chilly day yesterday, a little bit of rain last night, but thus far we've been clean and green and a beautiful and summer-like day here in the streets of Toronto. Beautiful weather, and we again thanks all of you race fans for coming out and joining us today. MX5 Cup Challenge second practice session underway. Before we welcome back in Tony Laporta, I'd like to remind any future racing champions, if you're here today, well, we'll start them on the right track with the Honda Junior Red Riders program. The Junior Red Riders team will be teaching kids age 6 through 12 the fundamentals of how to safely ride a small Honda dirt bike. Honda supplies the bike, safety equipment, and lessons. So stop by early and sign up today. For more Junior Red Riders program dates, visit jrr.ca. Get the most out of this year's festival by going beyond the race at Honda World. And at Honda World, right there at the exit of the Enercare Center as you cross that Honda Bridge between turns 10 and 11. Global MX5 Cup. Bright and early this morning, they dusted off the track for us, and they are back with us for their second practice session of the day today. And joining us here in the public address booth, the voice of the Global MX5 Cup, Tony Laporta. Welcome back, Tony. Able to get a little break in the action. Did you have any opportunity to talk to any of the drivers, their thoughts of this facility?
Yes, sir. Michael, actually, I did. And, folks, you're very lucky here at Toronto to have a voice on the PAL weekend like Michael Young. I did get a chance to go talk to a few of the drivers and teams, and this street circuit is, believe it or not, narrow, according to all these drivers. And a few of them love it. A few of them, it scares them. But they all are having fun. And, yeah, getting to walk around the paddock area back there off of Turn 11 and talk to a few of these drivers and teams. Actually, not too many drivers out walking around. A lot of them in their trucks, in their debrief rooms, going over setup and stuff of the like, track maps with their teammates, their fellow drivers, and their engineers. So a few drivers tucked away, but a few out sitting around and willing to talk. And, yeah, the consensus among most of these MX5 Cup drivers, streets of Toronto, narrow.
And you said fear. I don't think fear in the sense of driving. It's the fear of wadding up one of your cars, because the last thing you want to do with the opening session of a weekend, hit a wall, because that could put a real damper on your weekend.
No, exactly, and I think that's fair. The guy that I actually heard use the word, it's scary out there is your reigning champion, Nathaniel Sparky, in that number 8 Soul Red Mazda with the bright green roll cage. He used the word scary, but I think you're right, Michael, in the sense that he's not scared of going out there and driving the car. He's not scared of what he's doing. He's scared of what could happen.
Yeah.
And these concrete walls that line the track on both sides here in Toronto, yeah, they're not very forgiving, and they don't look soft. They shouldn't look soft. They're not soft. And, yeah, the risk versus reward factor here at Toronto is incredibly high, and it's high in the favor of risk, unfortunately. So, yeah, when you have your reigning champion, a guy like Nathaniel Sparks, who's very experienced in these cars, he already has several podium finishes on the year. When he's the one telling you that it's sketchy and it's scary out there, you better believe him. So, yeah, it's nerve-wracking, I think. If it's nerve-wracking for the drivers, it's certainly nerve-wracking for the team's mechanics and engineers who have to repair these cars when they come back. But we got through that first session cleanly. No yellow flags. Thank goodness, no red flags. So a great opening session. We hope to see the same here in practice number 2.
We saw Brian Ortiz making a move down into turn number 1 down the front straightaway. That can be scary. You get some of these drivers get too wide, and as everybody's learning the track, they're all learning the track together, and somebody's trying to make a pass on somebody else, and you run out of real estate in a hurry, especially on a street circuit. And as you said, those walls creep up awfully quick. Just need to be careful with your fellow competitors and learning not only the circuit, but where you can make your moves, where you can make your passes.
Well, Brian Ortiz, you bring up a great driver, Michael, because he's trying to figure out this track for the first time today. Because Brian comes from Puerto Rico, and he's been flying since 9 a.m. yesterday. He got in 2 hours ago to Toronto. He literally ran to the car where they had it parked on pre-grid right behind the grandstands in turn 11, and he had to sprint to the car, putting on his fire suit one leg at a time, and jump into that car. They weren't sure he was even going to be here until qualifying tonight. Again, Ortiz hailing from Puerto Rico, so he has run into flight troubles all day yesterday and all day today. He literally just got into Toronto less than 2 hours ago. So he is literally finding out this track for the first time. That was his first lap around the circuit, and not a bad lap, a minute 29.523. But Ortiz, behind the 8 ball is an understatement, as he is just getting into the car minutes ago.
And one of the scariest parts, to use that word scary again, if you're coming into Toronto for the first time, from the airport to the circuit can take forever.
Yes.
A day. And I bet you could, at some points, walk to the circuit quicker than you can drive from the airport.
Absolutely. So it's the team was very nervous with whether Brian was going to get here in time for even qualifying or not, and they were terrified that if that was his first session, how was it going to go? But his crew chief did tell me, now if he only gets in for qualifying, we're praying for rain. Ortiz, one of the many drivers actually in this series who does excel in the rain. But as we all know, it's the great equalizer. Not everybody is as good in the rain as they are in the dry. So his team said, well, if Ortiz misses this second session, we're going to keep praying for rain. Thankfully, he's here. He's in the car. He's out on track right now. I'm sure they would still take some moisture when we get to qualifying, but he's one of the few people that want to see a slick and a wet racetrack. But, yeah, it's a crazy story. Ortiz running into travel problems, but he is here. He's on track for practice number 2, and he is working his way around the very tight and winding circuit here in the streets of Toronto. There's a great look right there. What's that? Coming out of 10, I believe, shooting him onto 11.
Yep. Robert Stout, P1, minute 25.896. Todd Lamb, P2. Who do we expect to see in this session now? Everybody's kind of settled in. Any surprises for you in that first session?
You know, I talked to Joe Da Silva when we went back to the paddock, to the garage area. And, you know, I asked him, I said, is the track dirty? Is it? And, he said, no, it's not so much dirty, but there's no racing line cut in yet. There's not a lot of rubber down. He says he likes it. A few of the other drivers I talked to said they were waiting and they were eagerly looking forward to the track having some more rubber and some more grip built into it. The drivers, not a lot of surprise in that first session. Matt Cresci just lays down your quickest lap of this session to minute 25.58. He ended practice number 1 third quickest. And again, Matt Cresci is one of the drivers, Michael, competing for the $50,000 Rookie of the Year bonus. But there's a lot of Rookie of the Year contenders. The guy we were just talking about, Brian Ortiz, he is also challenging for the $50,000 Rookie of the Year grand prize. So you got a lot of very aggressive rookies. When I look at the time charts from last session, I don't really see any surprises. Hernan Palermo, Luke Ochsner, Joe Da Silva, he was 8th. Max Faulkner, Zach Lee. Really, honestly, the fast guys were fast, and I think you're going to see that continue. Robert Stout was quick to start the session. He's now down to P2. He's about 0.3 of a second off Matt Cresci. You got Todd Lamb in 3rd, point leader Gallagher in 4th. Keith Jensen, I will say Keith Jensen, he is one of our older drivers. I believe he's out of Fort Worth, Texas, and he's P5 right now. So to answer your question, I didn't see any big surprises in session number 1. But right now, to see Keith Jensen up inside the top 5, I never like to say it's a surprise because all these are good drivers. But we haven't seen top 5 speed out of Keith Jensen much of the year. So it's good to see Keith up there. He's at a minute 26.44 right now. And he's roughly 0.8 of a second off the fast time. So hopefully Jensen can stay up there. He's kind of the surprise to me right now in this session.
Patrick Wilmot around the machine of Alex Bachora. That just happened down the front straightaway. Looking at the end of Thunder Alley, that's turn number 3, and you see one of the cars going 3 wide, making it 3 wide. We cut away from that shot, but interesting in this, and we saw one of the cars wiggle right there. That's the 03 machine making his way out through turn number 4.
That's Ashton Harrison. To my knowledge, the only female driver we have in the field. And again, she's one of the drivers receiving private coaching from Tom Long. And you sports car fans out there will recognize the name Tom Long, factory driver for Mazda's prototype effort at IMSA. They were just on track here in Toronto last weekend in Bowmanville, Ontario, technically at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. And so Tom does private coaching for the GB team, Ashton Harrison in the 03, and her teammate Patrick Wilmot in the 06. So, and speaking of Tom Long, I can never reiterate this enough, Michael. It's so incredible to me that these are street cars. These are cars that were bought on the showroom floor of Mazda dealerships all around this country. And then these cars are taken down to Statesville, North Carolina. Tom Long, that driver in Mazda's prototype effort, his father, Glenn Long, owns Long Road Racing down in Statesville. And they're working out of an old retired NASCAR team's shop in Statesville. And they take Mazda MX-5 Roadsters and they convert them in just under 3 weeks to these race cars that you see today. And one of the really interesting parts about these cars, what Long Road Racing does, is they put a roll cage in these cars. Obviously, they don't come like that off the showroom floor. It's a convertible car. Long Road Racing installs all these roll cages that you see in them. And I'm hoping I don't forget one of the four. That roll cage in that car that you see on every one of these MX5 Cup cars that Glenn Long and his team install, these roll cages are accepted and are allowed to race in IMSA-sanctioned events, SCCA-sanctioned events, NASA-sanctioned events, and even FIA-sanctioned events. So that takes that race car right there, and you're never going to be told you cannot race an event based on the safety parameters that this car has, its roll cage specifically. Whether you're just doing a track day lapping at NASA events, you're doing some SCCA racing, some club racing at the SCCA, or you're going IMSA or FIA-sanctioned racing, two of the largest governing bodies in the world of motorsport, that roll cage and the safety aspects in these cars are going to be allowed at any one of those four organizations, and I think that's incredible. That's just one of the ways that Long Road Racing is making it affordable for MX5 Cup drivers. And another fun thing about these cars, you can get these cars from Long Road Racing with a passenger seat. So you can take a guest or a passenger, you can do lapping days, coaching, anything in these cars.
Robert Stout, Keith Jensen, nice little battle as they work their way through turn number 1, now up through the gears and to down into the Thunder Alley, turn number 3. Stout currently P2 in this practice session. There's Stout coming right into our picture right now is the Stout machine. Interesting you talk about safety, Tony, the fact that all the various series that these cars can run in. You think about it, it's just a street car.
Yeah.
And to be able to modify it to that extent and make it still extremely safe. And you talk about street cars, a couple of these great shots. You see a manhole cover right there out of turn number 7. There's a couple of manhole covers at the exit of turn number 11. That if any place, in a great shot here of turn number 8, if any place there's a manhole cover there that these cars would shine, it's on the streets of Toronto.
It's just so funny. And, we joked about at the end of practice number 1. These are street cars, and now we're racing for the first time in a long time with these MX5 Cup cars on a street circuit. Literally, these roads are what these MX5 Cup cars were designed and what they were built and what they were produced to drive on everyday average city roads, downtown roads like the ones that this track is built on here in Toronto. So it's very funny if you keep up with MX5 Cup racing, you know that these are roadsters, you know that these were built and designed to be driven as your daily driver. Or as your weekend roadster, whatever you want, but they were not built to be race cars. These are not born race cars. These have been converted into race cars. And so it's just funny. We're racing, street circuit, simple guy like me, I find humor in that.
Keith Jensen, Patrick Woolmont, we've got a good battle coming into turn number 3. They are right behind it. If we could hold on to this shot for a second. Jensen, Woolmont, we go back to that shot. Just keep an eye on those two cars as they work their way through turns 3, now turns 4. This will be turn 5 right here, and we hang on a second. The next shot will be those two cars. They were nose to tail just a moment ago. We'll see if Woolmont got around Jensen. No, he didn't.
Jensen's still out in front leading that little battle.
That's a good little battle right there. They were, really going at it, going down into turn number 1.
And that is what, Michael, you get to expect in these cars. You get to see practice get a little dicey, a little racy. There you go. There's a good shot of Jensen and Wilmot. And you might think to yourself, hey, it's just practice. Why are they dicing up so much? Well, they're getting ready for race conditions, and it's going to be really intense when we get on track. So practice mimics racing pretty closely. Racing when these guys get the green flag turned loose on them tomorrow afternoon. It is going to be intense, very close, and freight train style racing. Long draft packs. You see a good shot down the long front straightaway here at Toronto. Drafting plays a massive role in these cars, and with as little time as they're going to get on long straightaways like the front stretch here at Toronto, every bit of aero helps. So you're going to see very close racing when these cars get the green flag to race number 1 tomorrow afternoon.
Thunder Alley, the exit of turn number 2, you see back to that. There's the entrance to turn number 3. You'll see a lot of passing. There's a runoff area right there in case drivers miss that braking point. They'll run into that runoff area. Great shot there. Good 3-car battle in this practice session. I believe Ashton Harrison, one of those cars. Patrick Gallagher, P1, minute 25. 1:10. That is the quick lap time. Robert Stout, P2. Matt Cresci, as Tony had said, running P3.
And we just look at lap times and how they've changed, Michael, as we were hitting on our top 5 here in this session. Todd Lamb ended practice number 1 as your quickest driver with a minute 26.142. Right now in this session, times have already improved so much that would put him 6th in this session, which ironically is where Todd Lamb is right now. So Lamb, again, was your quickest last session with a minute 26.142. He is now 6th in this session with a minute 26.143. So consistency is worth something, I think, at the end of the day. But the top 5 have already progressed into the minute 25-second bracket. And as you said, Patrick Gallagher, your championship point leader, he is our quickest driver on track right now. Minute 25.114. Gallagher, quickest on track now. He ended practice number 1, second quick. So Gallagher, he's won 5 out of our 6 races this year. And he looks to add to that win total here in Toronto, I think.
Todd Lamb's consistent. And that's a good thing, but you consistently want to go faster.
True.
Staying at the same lap times isn't a good
thing.
No.
Consistency is good when it's consistently improving.
Right,
so
exactly.
I agree with you there, but it's a fun little number to look at.
Great shot there. That is turn number 5. As you see the cars sweep through turn number 5, they set up, and right there you just see the cars making their way through turn number 6. They now go through turn number 6. And then they'll drag race down into turn number 7. They'll set themselves up there through turn number 7. The next shot you'll see is turn number 8. That's the exit of turn number 7. And the heavy braking zone, and you see the asphalt going into the concrete patches. That could cause a driver to have themselves a handful. Just those various types of racing surfaces really can not only change the way you brake through one of those turns, but just how your car handles altogether.
Yeah, you're right, Michael. It can, but again, the benefit to this car being a street car, it's not a purpose-built race car where every inch of it is carbon fiber and it's used to reacting to just pure asphalt. No, these cars are not going to get as shaken up on a transition from asphalt to concrete to asphalt. Yeah, you do have these BF Goodrich racing tires on them, and how they grip the transitioning pavements is important, but I don't think you're going to see the massive changes like you're going to see in the Indy cars and the Road to Indy cars later this weekend. What's really going to throw these guys off is what you see right there, that streak of wet pavement running down across the straightaway. That's what Nathaniel Sparks, our reigning champion, told me. He goes, that's one of the sketchiest parts of this track, is that you still have some pretty substantially sized wet spots around this track, and it's not even standing water, it's just slick pavement. So that is one of the interesting parts about this street course. There's no track drainage. There's not that ability for water to just run down banking. We're sitting on crowning roads, and water can sometimes just sit for hours at a time. So the more laps of cars we see, the more that water will go away. But right now, some slick spots around the track are what's really throwing these MX-5 Cup drivers for a loop.
Tom Martin, Todd Lamb battling out of turn number 11 last time by. Immediately behind them was Nathaniel Sparks, and Sparky decided he didn't want anything of it. Let a little gapped himself about 5 or 6 car lengths, so we'll see how that little battle shapes up. But as you had talked to Nathaniel Sparks, saying, various parts of this course, he's just kind of getting himself settled in. There goes the number 21 machine of Tom Martin, and then the 84 of Todd Lamb. And you can see they were nose to tail just a lap ago. 32 of Keith Jensen. So we lost Nathaniel Sparks somewhere in the mix.
Well, you talk about Nathaniel Sparks seeing that battle happening and wanting to get out of it a little bit. It's always funny to think how you word this next part, but when I spoke to Joe Da Silva, who is currently scored as the, trying to find where he is, he's actually scored 17th quickest right now, so they must be doing work to that number 07 car. But Joe Da Silva told me that to be faster on this track, he likes it because it's a little sketchy, it's a little scary. He says that you had to have big, let's say intestinal fortitude is what you had to be quick.
Great way to phrase that.
Thank you very
that,
much.
Yes.
Yeah, Michael was sweating when he heard me get towards that part.
Oh, we had a little problem down there to interrupt you quickly.
No.
At turn number 11, car around.
That's going to be the 07 of Da Silva. Oh, there you go. Right as soon as we talk about him, something happened. So that's on me.
Oh, look at the back end of that car.
He slid in backwards to
really
the
hit hard.
Entry at turn 11. So, of course, that's my fault for bringing up Da Silva. But Joe Da Silva said, you have to have lots of guts, let's say, intestinal fortitude to get around this place. And I mentioned that to Nathaniel Sparks, and Sparky, your champion, he goes, I don't want to be the guy with the biggest guts. He goes, I want to be the guy that just gets out of there and drives away and wins the thing. So that plays into what you just saw. Sparky seeing a battle here in practice. Sparky going, hey guys, this is practice. We ain't even to qualifying yet. I'm going to get out of here. And so there goes, I think that speaks a bit to his ability to manage a weekend and get through each session and, 1, score as many laps as possible, but 2, not put his race car in the fence.
Great driver knows where that line is. When you cross that line, and Da Silva crossed it, you have a wadded up race car. The back end of that 07 really damaged. Minute 27, 49-41, the best for De Silva. And certainly that car in need of repair after this session is over. And basically the last thing you want to have to do before going into qualifying later today is have a damaged race car.
Yeah, but thankfully we do have a big break in the schedule. This is the last session of the morning for these battery tender Global MX5 Cup drivers. The next time they'll be on track is around the 5:30, around the 6 o'clock hour when they qualify. So he'll have more than 5 hours to get that car repaired. And it doesn't look to be any structural damage, just body work. But still, it's not going to be easy as one driver slides off wide.
2 cars nearly using that runoff. Yes, indeed. That's the exit of, or entrance, I should say, of turn number 3. I think Harrison was one of those cars that nearly used the runoff, but was able to negotiate that curve. Turn, I should say. I wasn't sure who that car that went into the runoff was. But you talk about De Silva. Let's talk about that body work and just the situation with that. Is this just a lot of beating and banging on that body work to get it straightened out? Do you pull it off? Or what? I think we see there's the De Silva car right there, and there's a lot of damage. And looks like potentially some parts falling off of that car. It is a lot of damage as he brings that to the attention of the crew. How much work is involved in that, if you will?
You know, I'll be honest with you, Michael. We've already had 3 race weekends this year. You know, we've seen some shunts and we've seen some cars go off hard.
Oh, look at right there. There's the exit of turn number 11. There's a lot of debris right there. That's where the car went around of De Silva.
I'm honestly surprised they haven't thrown a yellow to clean that up, to be honest with you. But as I was saying, you know, we've had a few pretty heavy accidents this year, which have included chassis or structural damage. And then in those situations, obviously the driver is just, the session's done, and they take the car back and they do whatever work they have to back at the shop, back home. For just cosmetic body work like that, I'll be honest with you, long road racing carries a truck with them and has a lot of parts on it. When it comes to just rear end body work, I don't know. I think you're going to see a lot of hammers and a lot of mallets when they get that 07 back to the pit. But back in those paddocks, like we were talking about in the first session, you know, these are not the 18-wheelers. These are not the double-decker team transporters you're going to see inside the Enercare Center with our Indy cars and Road to Indy teams. These are guys out of open trailers or out of toter, style trailers with a big tractor trailer pulling it and a toter style trailer. So they don't carry extra cars. They don't carry backup kits or rear clips or anything like that. I think you're going to see a lot of beating, a lot of banging, and we might even see a little bit of a mechanical trick from the United States brought up, and that's a lot of duct tape. So we're going to see. I don't know what they're going to do to fix that car, honestly.
Just a few minutes remaining in this second practice session. Gallagher, Cressy, Lamb, Stout, Ortiz, they are your top 5. Sparks currently sits on pit lane. Best lap time, minute 25, 11:04. That's the machine of Gallagher that we were telling you about. Good session for Gallagher. Patrick from Thornville, Ohio. You talked about that McCumbee McAleer Racing program. It's a good operation.
Oh, I mean, you got Chad McCumbee and Stephen McAleer, both IMSA racers, and they obviously know sports cars, and they've been incredible. And Stephen McAleer, I don't know Chad as well as I know Stephen from our karting days. Stephen comes from a place called Oakland Valley Raceway Park up in Cutterbackville, New York, and that is a technical joint. If you are fast in go-karts, you have a good chance of being fast in cars. But if you're fast in a go-kart at OVRP in Cutterbackville, New York, you're probably going to be fast in almost anything you get in. And that's where Steven and his brother Stuart grew up racing, and they came and perfected their craft over here in the States. So Chad McCumbee and Stephen McAleer, they're sports car guys. They know how to get these cars on the track, and they've owned this team for the last few years. They've stepped out of the driving role, and they field a team of cars, and they've got 2 great drivers in their cars. Again, Patrick Gallagher has just been lights out, and Robert Stout, his teammate, is the only other driver to win a race this year. And, of course, in that race that Stout won, Gallagher was literally hanging on his bumper the entire main event at Indianapolis, and Gallagher was right there behind him in second. So it's been a successful season for the McCumbee McAleer guys, but half of it is driver, and boy, half of it is team. And that sounds like such a simple equation, but when you have the crew that Steven and Chad have, it makes the day easier for the drivers. So that's pretty cool to see.
Nice configuration, the grandstands this year, and that complex down there turns 8, 9, 10, and 11 as we saw the De Silva machine go around, part of the bumper remaining there at the just outside of the racing line. It lays right against the wall. We'll clean that up as soon as the session is over. Less than a minute remaining. Second practice session for the Global MX Cup machines. They'll take a break and come back and qualify a little bit later on this afternoon. Nathaniel Sparks has sat on pit lane for about, I don't know, the last 5 minutes or so. Think he's content? Think he's done seeing the chaos out there?
Yeah, I think they've got what they've got and they're happy with it. And I don't think you're going to see him. You mentioned a smart driver knows that line of when to push and when to go out and when to hold him back. And so he's currently scored 6th quickest, minute 25.780, 6/10 of a second off of the fast time. So Sparks is happy with where he's at. And I wouldn't be surprised to see a little bit more speed come out of that car by the time we get to qualifying. It's overcast right now as we look down the front straightaway into turn 1. The fog that was kind of covering the top of these skyscrapers here in downtown Toronto, it's lifted. The sun was out in the middle of this session, but it's back to pretty much overcast skies. I have no idea what our forecast looks like for qualifying around that 6 o'clock hour tonight. But Sparks is happy. They're 6th quickest, and as the checkered flag flies, Michael, I think they got out of this session what they wanted to, and that, most importantly, is their race car back in one piece.
Gallagher, Cressy, Lamb, Stout, Ortiz, they are your top 5. You look down the remainder of the top 10. Anybody surprise you in this session?
Sparks 6th, Oxner 7th. Man, they've had great luck. They've had great speed this season. Terrible luck. Oxner was involved in a hard-off at the beginning of the year at Barber down in turn number 1. Martin is 8th, Keith Jensen 9th, Patrick Wilmot 10th. No, I mean, really, it's hard for me to say, oh, I see a surprise, I see a fast guy, I see a slow guy, because all these drivers, when we get to this race, folks, every one of these 17 cars are capable of winning their race. So now that it's quiet, I just want to take one more chance to remind everybody, no matter what you're doing this weekend, get somewhere where you can see these MX5 Cup races. Qualifying is later this evening, and then there's a pair of races tomorrow. And they are going to be a lot of fun to watch. It's pack-style racing. It's low horsepower. Momentum means everything. You're going to see passing for the lead in every corner, down every straightaway. So if you're here this weekend taking in the great racing, make sure you find somewhere to sit down and watch this Global MX5 Cup racing because, Michael, it is going to be exciting. And I always manage to lose my voice calling these races. They are awesome.
There are the results on the video screens. The autograph session for the drivers of the Global MX5 Cup will happen at 2 o'clock this afternoon. Tony Laporta, we thank you for coming up and joining us for this second practice session. We'll see you later on this afternoon. Enjoy your afternoon.
Michael, thank you very much. Fans, have a great afternoon here in Toronto. We will be back for qualifying, so we will see you a little bit later on. Thanks, Michael.
You got it. Tony Laporta, the voice of the Global MX Cup Series. We thank Tony, and there you see the autograph schedule for today. The Enercare Center, the West Atrium, that's the very end before you exit to head over the Honda Bridge. USF 2000s will be our first autograph session. That happens at 11 a.m. Then the drivers of the Indy Light Series. We haven't even seen them yet. They're going to be rolling in a little bit later on this afternoon, but they'll sign autographs for you at 11:45. Then the stars of the Verizon IndyCar Series. They'll have one practice session under their belt. We'll know initially who's quick at that autograph session. 12:30 is when that gets underway, and then the autograph session we just spoke of. The Global MX5 Cup drivers will join us at the West Atrium there in the Enercare Center at 2 o'clock. Coming up next, race fans, grab something to drink, something to eat, sit back, and get ready to watch the stars and the cars. The big cars come out. The Verizon IndyCar Series, their first practice session, 10:40 this morning. Then we'll see the NASCAR Pinty Series. Adam Ross will join us in the public address booth. Their first practice at 11:40 this morning. Very, very busy afternoon. USF 2000 qualifying. That happens at 12:55. They had one practice session. They go right to qualifying. Then the Indy Lights cars. We spoke of their autograph session. Their first practice happens at 1:30, the final rung of that Mazda Road to Indy program. Then the second Verizon IndyCar Series practice session at 2:15. Then we'll roll right into pit stop practice, something new for 2017. They'll actually have the drivers go out and practice their pit stops. Good opportunity for you fans right down there in turns numbers 10 and 11. You can see those drivers and their crews go to work. One of the most critical part, the most crucial part of a race weekend, pit stops. Then NASCAR Pinty Series qualifying, 3:35, and GT3 Cup Challenge practice session number 2. We saw Scott Hargrove quick in that first practice session, 4:50. The time we'll start that practice session and wrap up the day with the cars you just saw. Global MX5 Cup qualifying, that gets underway. 5:35 this afternoon. Race fans, Verizon IndyCar Series, their first appearance as we get set for a great weekend of racing here on the streets of Toronto. We welcome you. Day number 1 of the Honda Indy Toronto. Ontario. Howell Hinchfair got himself his first podium here, and I know he eagerly wants to win here in his home track. A reminder for all of you race fans, IndyCar would like to thank the following official sponsors for their continued support. Autodesk, official technology partner. Borg Warner, official turbocharger. Coors Light, the official beer. Dallara, official technical partner. Featherlight, the official trailer. Homatro, official rescue tool supplier. Honda, the official passenger vehicle and official pace car. And IndyCar Ministry, the official pastoral services. There's the point standings coming into this Honda Indy Toronto. Scott Dixon, just a handful of points, 8 as a matter of fact, ahead of Helio Castroneves. Never really had a great race car yesterday, although managed to eke out a, say, mid-pack finish. Castroneves with that win catapults him over his teammate Simon Pagenaud for that second position.
The streets of Toronto. This is the Verizon IndyCar Series on the Advance Auto Parts IndyCar Radio Network.
One of North America's great cities. Well, one of the world's great cities, in all honesty. The streets of Toronto's Exhibition Place, an 11-turn, 1.7-mile temporary street course, 85 laps for the Honda Indy Toronto, and the schedule moves along. And boy, what a radical change from that bull ring at Iowa Speedway, competed just a few days ago, in which Helio Castroneves ended his long winless streak. And Dave First joins me in the booth. I'm Mark Janes. And Dave, I said at the time that it probably wouldn't mirror the level of excitement of the 3,500 wins for Helio, but it was darn close for sure.
And no doubt about that. You just saw the joy in his face after he climbed out of the cockpit along the front stretch there at Iowa and climbed the fence. It's hard to believe it's been that long since his last win. But he got it done, and now he sets his sights on that elusive Verizon IndyCar Series championship, something that's eluded him throughout the course of his career, but he's got a great shot at it this year.
More about that and what may have provided a little added incentive for Helio to get that win. Some news that broke over that weekend in Iowa. But first, Nick Gilman joins us from Pit Road. Nick, you've been at this a while now, and I know you've enjoyed a lot of interviews, been happy to have the opportunity to interview a lot of drivers, perhaps no one more so than the gentleman that you're about to talk to this morning.
Yeah, that's right, Mark. Standing by here on pit lane in Toronto with Sebastian Bourdais. It's so good to see you here this weekend after that frightening crash at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Let's first get a bit of a progress report. Everyone wants to know how you're doing, how you're feeling on the road to getting back to the race car.
Yeah, feeling really good. Obviously, I didn't really want to attend the race before I was off the crutches, but now it's feeling pretty good, and there's no real pain, and been able to hit it at the rehab place pretty hard. So yeah, it's all coming together and heading in the right direction now. Just a matter of kind of getting back in the car, seeing how it feels, and reevaluate from there. But the goal is still to be back for Watkins.
I know I'm not alone in thinking that a lot of people just blown away at how quickly this recovery process has gone. When you were out of the hospital a couple days after the pelvis and hip fractures, we've seen the videos of you now back up on your feet. Have you been surprised at how quickly your body's healed over the last month and a half?
I don't know. I mean, honestly, I have nothing to base it off of, and I think every injury is different, and everybody heals differently. But it's now almost 8 weeks, so it didn't feel that fast to me. It's been a long waiting game, but I knew that going in, and just glad there were no complications, and from there it's just looking forward and getting back in the car.
Take the race car driver helmet off, put the analyst headset on for me. What's your thoughts on this 2017 season? 9 different winners in 11 races, and obviously your boys for Dale Coyne Racing have been very competitive week in, week out.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Ed's done a great job, and Esteban is, coming to grips with the series, the cars, and the tracks, and everything. So he's done really, really well at Iowa, which was, a big test for him. And I think it will help him as well, down the road for even here, just to get the confidence in the car to, when you push the car to its limits, doesn't matter really where it is, but I think Iowa doing it at 160, 170, and just being loose and having to deal with it. it's definitely going to help him to feel more comfortable between walls at 60 miles an hour. So it's just a confidence builder. But yeah, as far as the series is concerned, the competitivity of the field, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, we knew that going in, and it looks like every year it's just closer and closer and tighter in the championship. So yeah, just wish I was part of it. But it's fun to watch for sure.
And the final thing, you kind of touched on it. We had heard finale at Sonoma, we had heard Gateway, and now you're thinking Watkins Glen is when you like to get behind the wheel of that car?
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously no ovals for me this year. It wouldn't be smart. The bone still takes 6 months to be 100%. Don't want to take a shunt and go back on the table, but for sure road courses are more realistic, and the doctors are okay with it. So no reason not to get back in the saddle.
Well, it's good to see you here this weekend, and enjoy.
Thank you.
All right, that's Sébastien Bourdais, Mark, a guy who's gone to victory lane here at Toronto in past years. Good to see him up on his feet. Is walking with a cane, but he told Jake and I before we started the practice session that's just precautionary. The doctors want him to having that just in case he gets tired. But it looks good, and I think we're all excited, Mark, to see him back behind the wheel of a race car very, very soon.
Dave, going back to the day of that incident, Jim Aiello, our good friend from the Indianapolis Star, their motorsports writer, did an interview with Sébastien, and he knew that he was on the ragged edge on that run. And even a guy with his experience got caught up in the meaning and the mystique of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And he said, at that time I was not going to get the pole, but what I had was good enough for the Fast 9. So in retrospect, I probably could have and should have backed off a little bit. But in his defense, that's not the nature of a race car driver to back it down a little bit. So I don't think anyone would blame him. But the recuperative powers of Sébastien Bourdais just been amazing, and I'm sure that he's honored and humbled by the outpouring of support by fans and also his fellow competitors.
Well, I think it speaks to his fitness level too.
Sure.
His ability to bounce back from something like this. I mean, originally when he went into the IU Methodist Hospital back in Indianapolis, the prognosis that he would be there up to 10, maybe 2 weeks time or so, and then he was out in just a matter of a couple of days. In fact, came back and was at the track for the Indianapolis 500, the running of that a week later. So a tremendous job that he's been able to do throughout the course of his career and his fitness. That is undoubtedly the reason why he's going to be able to drive once again at Watkins Glen, and of course the season finale in Sonoma.
Interesting to note that Marshall Pruitt, I think shortly after that accident from Racer Magazine, he did an article as well, and he talked about 6 different factors that came together that allowed Sébastien Bourdais to survive that incident in terms of safety and innovation and lessons learned from previous crashes, even including the crash by James Hinchcliffe a couple of years ago, and some changes that have been made to the extrusion panels on the exterior panels on the side of the race car and whatnot. Now those have been beefed up. And of course, the amazing work by the Homatro safety team and IndyCar medical staff, the absolute best in the business, and it'll be great to see him back in the car at Watkins Glen, and certainly good to see him back at the racetrack. As we mentioned, we're here in Toronto, Exhibition Place. Mark Jaynes, Dave First, and Nick Yeoma. Jake Query also on pit road today. And, of course, Dave, some radical alterations to this course last year, necessitated because of some construction projects going on around here and changes made to the facility. But learning now that yet more improvements have come to the race course. There's some new pavement from turn 6 to turn 8. There were some current concerns that a couple of years ago we got a heavy amount of rain here, which created standing water on the backstretch, and they wanted to avoid that issue with the forecast calling for a chance of rain this weekend. So some repaving was done from 6 to 8. Also, turn 11 was a little tight. It's been widened 6 feet to give them a little more room to run, and other than that, the course is essentially what it was a year ago when the Verizon IndyCar Series visited.
It's amazing how this has kind of transformed, all because of the construction of that hotel, which is essentially a driver's right at the start-finish line here, again on this 11-turn, 1.7-mile layout, because of the area that hotel construction needed. And all of a sudden, the pits are on the other side of the track at the exit, or rather the entrance of turn 9. Marco Andretti light up the back of the tires, light the tires up a little bit as he makes his way around this race course. It puts on great racing. It's bumpy. The surface changes here are very interesting, not unlike what we saw in the streets of Detroit. That played pretty well for a guy by the name of Graham Rahal, who swept the 2 races there in Detroit. So we'll see if Graham can match that here in the streets of Toronto. We haven't been on a street course since then. But I love coming to Toronto. This is, it's spectacular, as you mentioned, not only city here in Canada, but around the world. It's one of those places that people want to come to.
31st edition of this race, and I think, maybe it has more longevity than others, but not as much as some. But I think the thing that I find interesting is that we have, of course, Long Beach, which I think has kind of been a class by itself because of its longevity. But now I really think Toronto, and then maybe slotting in behind that in terms of a street race, St. Petersburg. Yeah. Let's face it, they've become a staple on the schedule, a part of the history and tradition now of the Verizon IndyCar Series, which is, I think, speaks well of these promoters in terms of Green Savory. Max Chilton with a bit of it all. Another story unfolding. There's been a change. It's Schmidt-Peterson Motorsports. A new driver piloting the number 7 car this weekend, Jake Query.
Matter of fact, he just worked his way past pit road. We're talking about Sebastian Saavedra, veteran to the series, but we see him now piloting that number 7 machine. The team manager for Schmidt-Peterson Motorsports is Taylor Kyle. Taylor, let's begin with this. Why the driver change? Mikel Aloshin is here. He's at the track, and he is here in your pit stall. So why the change with Sebastian Saavedra?
Yeah, I don't really want to comment on the details of the driver change in itself, but there's a good opportunity here for Sebastian to get back in the car and work with us as a team to try to provide a good result for this group. Both sides came together on it. I think we're going to give Sebastian every opportunity that we've given anybody else, and we're going to go forward and try to have a good weekend here.
What challenges does it present from a team standpoint? Because I would assume that every driver maybe requires or likes a different feel for the race car. How much of an acclimation period is there?
There's a fair bit. I mean, he's out there right now just feeling the car, feeling how our car drives in comparison to some of the other cars that he's driven in the past. So we've filled him up with fuel, and we're just going to let him go have at it for a little while. Hopefully he finds his footing here fairly quickly, and we'll work with him all day to get him up to speed.
It rained a ton here yesterday and all through last night. Obviously, you're going to deal with a green track at the beginning of the weekend anyway. But have you had any chance to get a feel for the track itself and what challenges it's going to present? Or is this simply a let's find out what Sebastian needs?
Yeah, I think it's both. There's new patches of pavement all over this place. And it's as fresh as 4 or 5 days old. So when that stuff gets wet, it gets really oily and slick. So for us, it's obviously Sebastian feeling the car, but us trying to get a feeling of what the track's like, because I don't think really anybody does. We don't get to test here. Obviously, it's a street course, so everybody's in the same boat. We're out there just checking it out.
Will Mikel Aloshin return to the 7 car in the remainder of the 2017 IndyCar Series?
Yeah, we'll see. Well, all that's to be determined. We'll discuss all that and figure out a plan going forward. But for here, we're here with Sebastian. We're going to support him and try to get a good result.
Appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Again, Taylor Kyle is the team manager for Schmidt-Peterson Motorsports. That is car number 7 with Sebastian Saavedra. Now, the paint scheme is the same, still has that familiar cherry red and Lucas Oil sponsorship, but automatic fire sprinklers is added to it as well. That has been essentially a personal sponsor for Sebastian Saavedra during the course of his racing career. His relationship with Gary Peterson of AFS goes back a long way, and Gary's here as well. Mikel Aloshin is here, as I had mentioned. He is working with the team right now with Sam Schmidt with headsets on. We'll see if we can't get a word with him before the end of this session. But to repeat one more time, Sebastian Saavedra is in for Mikel Aloshin, and according to Taylor there, as you heard him say, this is obviously certainly for this weekend and could, while still at this point non-committed, be for more races than just Toronto, Mark.
And Dave, I'm not sure that it's based on statistics. Who knows what it's based upon? But we can say this from a statistics standpoint, and this this is, I think, very telling. Wish I could remember who I saw post this first on Twitter. I'd love to give them credit for that. If they're listening, they know who they are. But anyway, Ed Carpenter has competed in 4 Verizon IndyCar Series races this year, has completed 971 laps. Mikel Alosian has made 11 starts and has completed 968. That's 3 fewer laps. And talking about Sebastian Saavedra, again a veteran, this would be his 63rd career start. 1 pole at the Grand Prix, the Indianapolis Grand Prix in 2014. Has 4 top 10s. Led 3 races for a total of 26 laps. And Sebastian Saavedra, with assist from Gary Peterson and AFS from a sponsorship standpoint here this weekend, and is in that car for now. A surface flag joint filler is coming up on the front straight. Soft, but it's all over the place. So the drivers are being cautioned about that. We'll see if that becomes an issue as the weekend progresses. Well, the cloudy, somewhat cool conditions greeted us this morning after rainfall overnight. Let's get the specifics on the elements this morning from Nick Yeoman.
It is fairly cool this morning, Mark Janes. A little muggy, though. It's one of those sunglasses fog up as soon as you walk outside type mornings here in Toronto, Ontario. Ambient temperature right now is at 69 degrees Fahrenheit, 21 degrees Celsius. So again, the temp is not as high as what we've expected, but the humidity level certainly makes it feel a lot more muggy and a lot more warm down here on pit lane. Track temperature starting to climb as we speak, up around 77 degrees Fahrenheit, 25 degrees Celsius. And as you mentioned, very overcast morning, kind of hazy, and I can't really find the sun early on during this morning hours here in Toronto. But all in all, Mark, feels pretty good, and I think we're going to be watching the skies most of this weekend. Rain kind of hanging in the area. Tomorrow looks really good. Chance of, I think, some scattered showers today and maybe on race day. We're going to keep our fingers crossed, though. But right now, again, 68 degrees Fahrenheit, 20 degrees Celsius down here on pit lane at Exhibition Place.
18 of the 21 cars entered have turned laps here. Dixon, Ed Jones, and Tony Kanaan, just a couple. Saavedra making the most of this session. He's turned 9 laps in that 7 car. Marco Andretti is at the top of timing and scoring. He is at a time of a minute 4:8:35. Then Hinch, Castroneves, Hunter Ray, and Piggott, the top 5. Newgarden, Power, Gutierrez, Sato, and Dixon. Hildebrand 11th quick. Then Munoz, Chilton, Daly, Kimball. Rahals turned a couple of laps, much to the delight of those who follow him with the visor cam each and every week, Dave, online. Some trouble for Esteban Gutierrez. The number 19 has gotten into the runoff area. The Hamatro safety team has quick jacked him, and they are getting him spun around, and hopefully we'll get him restarted and get him back underway. He got rave reviews, Dave, after his performance at Iowa Speedway. I mean, let's face it, that's quite a tall task for a driver. He finished in 13th, and it had a couple of moments here and there, but I think he even said that overall he was pleased with the performance. He said it's unlike anything that he's ever done, but the bottom line is it rolled back onto the transporter in one piece, and at the end of the day, with a guy getting his first shot at an oval and it being a place like Iowa Speedway, I think that deserves more than a few attaboys.
All the more impressive when you go back to Texas, because he hadn't completed a rookie orientation on an oval. He wasn't allowed to race at Texas, and so I know many of us were thinking, well, is he not ready? Is he? Obviously, there's some apprehension about driving for the first time on an oval, and certainly at a bad, fast race course like the Texas Motor Speedway. But man, he handled himself very well. A guy with a lot of Formula One experience, and I think after you go to Iowa Speedway and turn in that kind of performance, I'm going to guess he's probably an oval fan now.
Let's go back to Iowa Speedway. We talked about the win by Helio Castroneves, and Dave, the rumor story broke over the weekend while we were in Iowa of perhaps the plans for a sports car team moving forward with Honda and Penske Racing, and Helio being paired with Juan Montoya at least. Penske remained, after the initial article came out, rather tight-lipped about their plans moving forward. Same thing with Helio Castroneves, and who knows? I don't think Helio Castroneves typically needs any motivation, but it was somewhat interesting to me that story broke, and I think we pointed out at one point with about 5 laps to go that clearly Helio has no plans to go away quietly, and there's a banner loose in turn 1, and that's resulted in a red flag situation. So they need to make some repairs and get everybody to pit road. So Helio, after the win, finds himself 8 points back. Was able to close the gap on Scott Dixon because Scott just was never in contention all day long. I mean, I don't think he ever got any higher than 8.
Well, yeah, that's where he finished, and you could just tell. I mean, he obviously started in the back and moved up through the field, but never was able to get into the top 10, or certainly the top 5 as well. He was just kind of mired mid-pack throughout the course of the evening at Iowa. I thought it was very interesting in the closing laps, though. Dixon was behind Tony Kanaan in a battle for 8th, and then Kanaan obviously thinking about championship points for his teammate, not worried about himself, because Dixon's obviously a huge player in the overall championship point standings, allowed Dixon to go by to pick up a couple extra points. So instead of being only up, I believe it was just 1 point at that time, Dixon was able to make up a couple more points, and now he heads into Toronto here this weekend, up 8 points in the championship. But Scott Dixon, now because of where he qualified at Iowa, he's further back now on pit road. In fact, he has the 17th pit stall, so those guys are going to have their work cut out for him this weekend.
Helio, as we mentioned, 8 points behind. Simon Pagenaud looking to go back-to-back for championships is 31 points back. Will Power is 53 back. Joseph Newgarden is 56, 66 back. Graham Rahal and Takuma Sato. And then you have to go to the 8th position in Tony Kanaan to find a guy that's triple digits back. And I think the window of opportunity for a championship for TK, Rossi, who's 113 back, boy, not only do they have to get red hot, but the guys in front of them who are very consistent drivers and aren't known for their DNFs would have to have a couple of miserable weekends. And I don't know that I'd like their chances. But, you know, they want to get inside the top 5. That I think would be the goal at this point for the drivers that we just mentioned that are 100-plus back.
How very Penske is this, though? The top 5 drivers, all 4 Penske drivers are in that top 5. Dixon's the only one that's holding those guys up. Helio 2nd, Pagenaud 3rd. Of course, the reigning champion, Will Power 4th, Joseph Newgarden 5th.
So Chevy doesn't want to entertain any conversations of Honda dominance this year, for sure. So
not so far.
So there are always interested spectators up and down pit road, perhaps no more so than the one that Jake Query has caught up with. Jake?
Currently involved right now in a points chase, as a matter of fact, in the Indy Lights presented by Cooper Tires, driving for Andretti Steinbrenner. And I'm talking about Colton Herta, who is sitting with your dad. Kind of a luxury, right, to be able to come out for a practice session. You're on the headsets for Marco Andretti, listening to your father, Brian Herta. First question would be, what kind of things can a guy learn by watching these sessions?
It's everything, you know, especially on a street course like this. I haven't driven here for 2 years, and they've changed it quite a bit. There's a lot that has been repaved since I've been here, a lot more potholes, and just to be able to watch the line and hear the feedback that he's given, it's huge, and it really gets me ready for the practice session this afternoon.
How often do you get an opportunity to do it? Because I would think at times the schedule might be a little more compact where you don't get that. So how many sessions are you able to come out and learn what you can?
Yeah, I would say not enough, because I don't make it out to all of them. So, you know, it's a bit tough because sometimes I'll be debriefing off of an Indy Lights run and they'll go out. But, you know, I'm always watching from the truck. So
let's talk about your season so far. You got up to a great start and obviously find yourself right there in the middle of things. How difficult is it when you get off to a good start, like dominating like you did for a race in St. Petersburg, to not get yourself into cruise control and to go after it and be a Tiger every weekend?
Yeah, it's tough. It takes a lot of mental strength along with the physical strength that it is to drive. So, it's just kind of getting your head in the right mindset for every weekend and keeping it there, which is tough. That's why you only see so many good champions.
When you talk about the Mazda road to Indy, you know, ultimately the goal is to end up in the Verizon IndyCar Series. Where are you in terms of your comfort level, your skill set, to where you think you need to be in order to run these cars?
I think if you win the Indy Lights Championship, then you're ready. You know, I haven't gotten a chance to drive the car quite yet, so hopefully I can soon whenever I get the chance. I think it'd be awesome, and that'll be the true testament to see if I'm ready.
Would you go another year in lights if that did not come to fruition and a ride did not open up for you?
Yeah, I think that's the plan. If I don't win Indy Lights this year, I'll go another year and then hopefully win it then and move up.
I'll tell you what, so far so good. It's been very impressive to watch you, and I know that you want to learn each and every weekend, but it looks like you're pretty comfortable in the car. You're pretty comfortable here on pit road too, aren't you?
Yeah, it's good. It's always fun to be able to watch before you go out. It kind of amps up the adrenaline. So.
All right, we'll let you get back on it on the headsets. Looks like we're about to go out here, and Marco Andretti will be taking that 27 car out, and you'll be on the headsets. Appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Colton Herta, who, I got to say, sounds a lot like his dad when you talk to him. He's been standing right next to Brian Herta and just taking in whatever he can. Those engines firing up, so indeed it looks like we're getting ready to go back. Marco Andretti's hopped out of the car, though. We'll see if maybe that doesn't mean something might be wrong, some gremlins perhaps with that United Vibrant data machine. We'll find out.
You know, Dave, we've been covering the Indy Lights presented by Cooper Tires for a number of years now, and I think the thing that I find enjoyable about that and the fact that oftentimes we get the USF 2000 and a Pro Mazda on the same weekend is, I mean, we're getting the opportunity to literally follow these guys all the way through the minor leagues, if you will, and then see what they accomplish in the quote-unquote pros. I mean, our Rob Howden, who will be with us later on today, Rob goes even farther back. I mean, a lot of these guys, even some guys in the Verizon IndyCar Series, once upon a time, Rob Howden handed them a trophy in Victory Lane when they were a kid running karts. So, you know, I think this kid is one of them that we've seen over the years, and it's not just, you know, sure, genetics are good for sure. The environment he's grown up in is really, really solid, but as Will Power spins in a runoff area. But let's face it, that kid is one of those that comes along that has can't miss written all over.
Yeah, that's one of those guys where you look at him, you look at his environment, there's no doubt about it. At some point, he's going to be in the Verizon IndyCar Series, let alone obviously Indy Lights. Just not a matter of if, a matter of when, right? And if not next year, and at this point, this championship battle is really heating up. But as he said, if not this year, next year for sure.
And once upon a time, a second year in Indy Lights was of no benefit. But now that the technology, the redesign of the race car is very, very similar, it does indeed make sense for a driver to maybe spend 2 or more seasons in Indy Lights if that is indeed what they need. But yeah, if you win the scholarship, there's just no reason to not move on. So we'll see how that unfolds over the course of the season. Tony Kanaan has only turned 2 laps in this session, the fewest of any driver. Let's find out more as to maybe why that's the case from Nick Yeoman.
Yeah, the biggest reason right now, I just got a word with Barry Wanzer. He said they're trying to manage those tires a little bit. Of course, the rookies and drivers outside of the top 10 get an extra set, so that's why the slow start of this session. And then when Tony Kanaan wanted to go out there and start turning some quick laps, that red flag came out. So Barry Wanzer said there's no issues with that car as of right now. Just the disjointed start to this session has kind of made it a slow start for Tony Kanaan. The nice thing, though, Mark, there is 2 sessions, 2 practice sessions, so any data that you don't gain during this first session, you can always find the time a little bit later this afternoon. Wanzer also said that the fact that Charlie Kimball was outside of the top 10, that he's given that extra set of tires, and that everyone up and down pit lane in terms of the Ganassi camp gathering data for Kimball getting to a little more extra practice time. So everything okay with Tony Kanaan. He just left pit lane, and that NTT data Honda that should be getting up to speed here momentarily, Mark.
So that tire management plan is something that unfolds from the opening session, Dave, and carries throughout the course of the weekend. And I think the goal, especially here, because of how unforgiving this place can be in terms of passing opportunities, obviously a premium here is placed on knockout and Firestone Fast 6 qualifying.
Just watching Marco Andretti, his crew did push his car back to the paddock area. Marco's second quick here in this morning's practice session after turning 11 laps. He's at a minute 2.034. But again, he climbed out of the car just moments ago. Crew has pushed him back towards the paddock area. We hope to hear from Marco Andretti here momentarily. Helio Castroneves, by the way, last week's champ at Iowa. He is quickest right now with, let's say here, almost just just over 15 minutes remaining in this practice session.
15th in points, Marco Andretti. You remember back to St. Petersburg, Davey, he qualified 15th, had a little issue in qualifying. Rebounded to finish 7th. And you thought, boy, I'll tell you, they moved Brian Herta to his pit box, and lo and behold, here we go. It's going to be a good season for Marco. 20th at Long Beach, 21st at Barber, 18th at Phoenix, 16th at the Indianapolis Grand Prix. Did get a top 10 finish at the 500. He's always fast there, and you might remember he came very, very close to winning back in 2006. 12th and 13th at Belle Isle. Then rebounded to avoid all the carnage in Texas, finished 6th there. Then an 18th place finish at Road America after starting 8th. Started 20th, did no better than 17th at Iowa last weekend, and coming up on 195 starts in his career. 2 wins and 4 poles. You don't need to talk much about the career, but certainly the expectations were high for Marco Andretti. Put in a lot of work in the offseason. And as we said, the decision made to move Brian Herta to that pit box. And unfortunately, not all of it of his doing. Some mechanical gremlins, a loose race car that they just couldn't get a handle on. And, no one is more frustrated right now, I think, than Marco Andretti.
Well, I'll take it a step further and maybe big picture it with the team. I mean, you look at Andretti Autosport as a whole right now this season. And Alexander Rossi, the 2016 Indy 500 champion, he's 9th in points, which by and large is a pretty good run for him this season because he's still getting used to this series a little bit. But further back, Ryan Hunter-Reay is 14th in points. Marco Andretti 15th in points. Granted, Takuma Sato won the Indy 500. He's 7th in points. But I think as a whole, this Andretti Autosport group would love to see things improve this season, let alone Marco Andretti.
14 minutes remaining in the session. Simon Pagenaud is P1. Elio Castroneves, Joseph Newgarden. So Penske has the top 3 spots. Although Marco's car has completed just 11 laps in the session and looks like maybe behind the wall. He was 4th quick. Then Kanaan, Chilton, Sato, Hinch, Hunter-Reay, and Piggott. So TK sat for a while, but has gotten up to speed quickly. Will Power is 11th quick. Rahal, Rossi, Hildebrand, Dixon the top 15. Then Munoz, Gutierrez, Daly, Kimball, Jones, Saavedra again in the 7th this weekend for Mikel Aloshin. Preparations continue for Sunday's race here at Toronto.
You can't take a 700 horsepower Indy car out on the road, but you can take the tires. The new Firehawk high-performance tires from Firestone are built with racing-inspired technology and have better wet and dry handling than ever before. Now the only thing missing is a pit crew.
Hi, Dad.
Well, that's a start. Find your perfect Firehawk performance tire at your local Firestone retailer. Whatever you drive, drive a Firestone.
9 different winners and 11 previous Verizon IndyCar Series races this season, Dave. The repeat winners, Will Power and Graham Rahal, who swept the weekend in Detroit. And that's why we are firmly convinced that this championship is far from being decided, given the fact that we're at Toronto. And then, of course, a week off before we go to Mid-Ohio. Then 2 races in August at Pocono and Gateway. So it'd be nice to run back-to-back on ovals, and then Watkins Glen Labor Day weekend before we get to the finale. And, we've seen this period of time in the past couple of years where drivers get red hot. Pagenaud a couple of years ago, and then of course Will Power, and then Will Power last summer got hot at about this time. We'll talk more about the championship chase when we return. A good run by J.R. Hildebrand last weekend at Iowa Speedway. Not a bad weekend all in all for Ed Carpenter Racing. Nick Yeoman, you've caught up with the boss.
Yeah, this team may not be in the championship hunt, but as you mentioned, a nice weekend at Iowa Speedway, Ed. J.R. with a second-place finish. You were strong throughout the course of the day. How much momentum does that carry over here to Toronto?
I mean, it's good to get results for the team, just to build some confidence and momentum. And I think anytime you're running well, it encourages the whole team to go out and keep getting results, whether it's guys in the pits having good pit stops or the drivers in the cars. Even though Spencer went in the car, it's motivation to keep that rolling and keep getting better. So, this has historically been a good track for us. Our cars have been pretty good. So hopefully, for us, looking for some breakthroughs this season, for Spencer, making it through some qualifying rounds and hopefully getting into the top 5, and want to see JR, hopefully get a top 10, if not better.
Qualifying is important every week in the Verizon IndyCar Series, but you and JR both qualified in the top 5 at Iowa and thus have pit stalls here at Pit Out. How important is that here? Because this is one of the most unique pit lanes we have all year.
Yeah, it's a tricky pit lane, but it's always good to be at the front end of it with guys that you need to be racing for the wins.
All right, appreciate it. Ed Carpenter's going to throw that headset back on and talk to his driver, Spencer Pigot. Ed, of course, drives in the ovals. Spencer's on the road courses, and that second car, of course, piloted by J.R. Hildebrand, fresh off a tying career best second-place finish at Iowa 1 week ago. And Mark, good news for broadcasters and maybe those without the best eyesight. Those two cars, different liveries this week, as J.R. Hildebrand's car has the Preferred Freezers sponsorship on it, and the number 20 for Spencer Pigot, the familiar Fuzzy's Ultra Premium Vodka. For those two cars for Ed Carpenter Racing.
Admittedly, a lap or two to get comfortable with that at Iowa a week ago. So, yes, Nick, I'll agree. That is certainly good news. For Spencer Pigot, on the road and street courses for Ed Carpenter Racing, had a couple of 20th place finishes and a 21st at Belle Isle, but been some bright spots for Spencer. He finished 8th at Long Beach, was really racy at the Indianapolis Grand Prix, and then had a top 10 at Belle Isle, and had a really good day at Road America. And I know he qualified 14th and would have liked a better result, but he's finished 12th in that race, Dave. So, it's got to be a difficult thing in terms of just continuity and momentum and whatnot to not be in that car all season long. But the bottom line is this. I think you can see, if you're Ed Carpenter Racing, that Spencer Pigot at times has shown some flashes of being very, very racy.
Well, it makes you wonder perhaps what's going to happen next year for Spencer Pigot. Does he get a full-time ride? Let's say if Juncos Racing goes full-time, what happens to Spencer next year? Content to have a ride the way it is right now, but I'm sure he'd love, as you mentioned, to go full-time racing in 2018.
Marco Andretti was running near the top of the timing scoring charts. Jay Query, is his session over?
Yeah, Marco Andretti is out of the car, so I guess one of two things happened there. Either the car was so good you didn't need anything more out of it, or something happened with that 27 United Vibrant data machine. Which is it?
Yeah, unfortunately, we're not that confident. We had a big oil leak, so it's a bummer. I want to be out there, but if it's going to happen, practice one's the time to do it. Track's still green, so we have a decent roll-off UFD car, so we'll see.
Have you at times, Marco, just asked yourself that it seems that if you didn't have any bad luck, you wouldn't have any luck at all? It's just been one of those years.
Yeah, it's hard not to dwell on it, for sure. We're just trying to take one event at a time right now. Obviously, we forget about the points and just try to string together a good weekend, try to win a race.
This is the time of year, obviously, where we start to get chatter about what happens moving forward. Now, I know you want to focus on this year, but in terms of teams starting to explore sports cars, and Marco Andretti's name also being floated out there as one of those, what is the possibility that you would not be in IndyCar full-time next year?
No, I think it's just the journalists doing as bad of a job as I'm doing this year. Because I'm not going anywhere. So I'm still hungry. I still have a lot to do here, and these results are not what we're about. So as much as people want to think that's the case, it's not. So I'm going to go do my best to prove it otherwise.
Put some Band-Aid on the oil and get the car out there, and obviously we know you got a fast one, so best of luck for a clean weekend and a fast weekend.
Thank you.
Marco Andretti.
Yeah, that pretty much clears that up. And it was funny because, we had last week at Iowa, Nick Yeoman and I were in the booth for one of the sessions, and we had speculated that it was about the time that you start getting some of those silly season rumors. And lo and behold, less than 24 hours later, the story broke, and we talked to Robin Miller about it, about Elio perhaps moving on to sports cars and doing an Indy 500 only schedule next year with Penske Racing. And so, we believe that some of that will continue, Dave, to pick up steam moving forward. Questions like, well, does that mean Penske goes back to 3 cars? And if he does that, does that mean Chip Ganassi goes back to 3 cars? If Tony Kanaan goes to sports cars and does an Indy one-off? And now now, stories we know because we've talked to people like Harding Racing and Juncos Racing and Carlin Racing and their desire. So that's where we speculate that the cars to make up for that would come from to keep the field from falling to 18 or 19 cars. I know this is going to be a very interesting end of the season and off season in terms of driver movement.
Think about it. Between now and, let's say, October, November, the landscape of this series is going to look, I think, pretty different. And even further in, deeper into the off season as well. There's going to be some big-time changes. I mean, eventually, there's a lot of speculation about with Elio going to sports cars or what. I know for a fact Tony Kanaan has aspirations into doing sports cars on a full-time basis, but he's not quite done doing Indy cars. You see Sebastian Saavedra go into the runoff area in turn 1, and Max Chilton's looped it around as well in turn number 8. But at some point, and that point is becoming closer to us than it has in the past, but guys like Elio, guys like Kanaan, there's going to be some turnover here in the Verizon IndyCar Series. When that is going to be interesting. Is it next year for Elio? If he wins a championship, though, it's hard to take him out of the car and put him into sports cars full time. You would think anyway, but we shall see. There's no cliche. Time will tell. Mark James.
It's interesting to note, Dave, that the concern I think being expressed as much as anything, and Robbins Miller from Racer Magazine and NBCSN was, he expressed this last weekend to RJ Query at Iowa Speedway. The popularity, the recognition factor of a Tony Kanaan and an Elio Castroneves. Elio is a guy that, quite frankly, through Dancing with the Stars, perhaps did as much as anyone to attract people from outside of the sport to the Verizon IndyCar Series. And the concern is, by some, is who's going to be there to replace them. My belief is that kind of is somewhat in place with thanks to social media with Joseph Newgarden and the James Hinchcliffe and Connor Daly and other drivers. I think you'll see others come along through the Indy Lights presented by Cooper Tires, and it will go on for sure. It'll be a period of transition, but IndyCar went through this same transition years ago. With the Unzers and Foyt and Rutherford and Rahal and Mears and when those guys one by one decided to hang it up in seemingly successive seasons. So we're confident that someone will be there to assume that mantle, and the health of the series will continue. Speaking of Elio, picking up right where he left off, Dave. Now with less than 5 minutes into this session, Elio Castroneves is now P1. Pagano, Dixon, Rahal, Piggott, Newgarden, Hinchcliffe, Kanaan, Sato, and Andretti. They are your top 10 as preparations continue for Sunday's race here on the streets of Toronto.
During the 1969 Indy 500, Mario Andretti's crew couldn't get his tire to come off, so he had no choice but to keep driving on it. That tire held up the whole race and took Mario to the winner's circle. Right, Mario?
That's right. If it wasn't for the dependability of Firestone tires, I wouldn't be an Indy 500 champion.
Here's to making more champions with the official tire of the Verizon IndyCar Series. Whatever you drive, drive a Firestone.
Honda Indy Toronto. Toronto's exhibition place, 11 turns, a little over 1.7 miles. By the way, 200 seconds of total time, maximum time of 20 seconds per activation on push to pass this weekend. We referenced earlier Tony Kanaan taking a wait-and-see approach early. 6 sets of primary, 4 sets of alternate. Teams must use 1 set of primary and 1 new set of alternate tires in the race. Dave, first, we did not mention there the wets, and there's an outside shot that we might need those this weekend.
Oh, you never know. We might need them for the practice session later this afternoon. They're saying that everything looks good tomorrow, though, so for qualifying, nothing but sunny skies and dry weather, but then come Sunday, things are going to be interesting as well. This could very well be a wet weather race, which I'm trying to think. We haven't had one yet here in 2017, have we?
No, we got a little bit of rain one cloud came from nowhere last weekend and red flagged the race at Iowa. I'm hopeful if we get rain on Sunday. I'm hoping for a window between 12:15 and 1:25 because that's when I'll be out on the course helping call the lights race. So on either side of that, I'm good if we get a little bit of rain and that gets added to the strategy. And I know some of the drivers, they kind of look forward to it. They enjoy doing it.
Oh, yeah.
And we don't get that many opportunities because it seems like it more often than not, it doesn't really rain enough consistently to make a difference and put them in, decision-making mode. Or it rains too much for them to run even in the wets, as we see Sebastian Saavedra testing the curbing. We've seen Alexander Rossi lose some rear end grip and slide it to the corner. We've seen Scott Dixon do that. We've seen Tony Kanaan do that. Suffice to say, about everyone has at one time or another.
So that's what you got to do out here. You got to test it a little bit to see where that ragged edge, if you will. That's always the cliche, the ragged edge. But you got to find that edge at some point out there, and that's what they're doing in this practice session. I'll tell you what, it rained really hard here in Toronto last night, and there have been some issues with puddling in years past, but this track here today has been awfully dry, and so it's the drainage has done a nice job here. And as you mentioned, Mark, the repave that they've done here since last year, the repave between turns 6 and 8. That has been huge as well. Checkered flag is out here on the streets of Toronto as Helio Castroneves takes the checkered flag and heads back to pit road. Castroneves is P1 at 1:01 and change. Joseph Newgarden second. A couple cars still out there trying to complete their last lap in this practice session. That includes Graham Rahal. We saw him out there earlier in new livery. Black, white, and red livery this weekend for Graham Rahal. Of course, his dad, Bobby, won the first race here on the streets of Toronto back in 1986. Graham Rahal, fifth quick here in this morning's session.
I do want to mention one other noticeable change, and we saw some drivers, I think, feel the brunt of it. Turn number 5, which they had tested the curbing there plenty. Some have actually gone to the outside of the curbing in the past, Dave. Turn number 5 now features double curbing. So I think that's a not so subtle way of saying, yeah, don't do that. Don't test
try to
it.
cut through it. Yeah.
So anyway, typically we like to get the thoughts and impressions of drivers, but as part of the process of the weekend, mandatory weigh-in, and of course the lengthy debrief. So we're going to go ahead and sign off for now. Rejoin us at 1:30 Eastern. That'll be Nick Yeoman, Rob Howden, Dave First, and company on pit road for the first Indy Lights practice session of the weekend. Jake will be down there as well. We have one more IndyCar practice session this afternoon. That'll be at 2:15 Eastern. We'll run till 3 p.m. Nick Yeoman will join me in the booth, and we'll have Rob Howden and Dave First on pit road for that. Again, Elio, P1, trying to get red hot and chase down Scott Dixon, Newgarden, Pagenaud, 3 of the 4 Penske's. The top 3, Dixon 4th, Rahal 5th, Piggott, Hinch, Kanaan, Hunter Ray, and Sato. The director of the Advanced Auto Parts IndyCar Radio Network is Wally Levitt. On-site engineering and production by Rick Evans. Great stuff on the breaking stories on pit road from Nick Yeoman and Jake Query. For Dave First, I'm Mark Janes. So long for now from Exhibition Place in Toronto.
This is the Verizon IndyCar Series on the Advanced Auto Parts IndyCar Radio Network.
A.J. Foyt down the main straightaway. The checkered flag is out. A.J.'s hand in the air. He is the winner. A.J. Foyt at Indianapolis has...
the sound you hear, that of the USF 2000 Series. Let's go qualifying, race fans. And before we introduce the voice for this USF 2000 Series, Rob Howden, I'd like to remind you, race fans, Cooper Tire, proud to be the official tire of the Honda Indy Toronto, as well as the official tire of the Indy Lights, presented by Cooper Tires and the Cooper Tires USF 2000 Championship, both racing this weekend at Exhibition Place. Cooper Tire offers tires for your car, truck, and SUV, covering the comfort and performance you should expect from your tires. To find a dealer nearest you, visit coopertire.ca, and you can also follow them Twitter and Instagram at Team Cooper Tire. 79 goes by. David Malukas, one of the last cars to go out the field. Underway. Rob Howden, we are qualifying in Toronto.
The thing I love about qualifying here at the street circuit is these guys have had one opportunity, 30 minutes to get onto the racetrack. For many of them, the very first time they've been able to get a feel for the track.
That's plenty. That's plenty.
That's enough.
That's plenty.
Well, one of the drivers actually didn't get here on time to even do the track walk. First time even seeing some of the corners was during the practice session. Track, of course, quite a bit different than it was when they got things rolling this morning at about 8:35. The Indy cars have been out there. We got some rubber down. The Pinty's NASCAR drivers were out there. So let's just say the track, much cleaner, a lot more grip. But again, these drivers have to be very smart because you do not want to waste early here in this session. You got to make sure you're getting a feel for the changes you made, because of course the drivers ran early. They'll make some change to the car, go back out on the racetrack before they put new tires on for qualifying.
We got a quick shot of Kalen Frederick, Team Pelfrey, just exiting turn number 2 down there. Not sure who's right behind him, but whoever that is, taking a look to the inside, and we'll get around. That is, tell who that was coming through.
I think that might have been Lucas Cole, potentially, in the Pabst Racing entry, number 23.
One of the Pabst cars.
You know, Michael, one of the interesting things that I always love going back to the paddock and talking to the USF 2000 drivers after their first run here, because so many drivers have never been here before. And anytime you go to some of these tracks, like a Toronto, like a Watkins Glen, you ask them, and you get that, oh my gosh, I love this track. I absolutely. And some of them will say no, it's kind of sketchy, but the guys that love it are the guys that you know are going to be fast. Oliver Askew, the point leader,
love it?
Actually tweeted it out as well. I love this track. It's a little bumpy. But they have made some improvements over last year, which I think are really notable. I'm not sure how much you've talked about it in the other sessions you've been calling here throughout the day. New rubber, of course, turns 5, 6, 7, and 8. Very important as a driver off. That is Ricky Donison. Next up, turn number 1. Yellow flag flying in turn 1 is Ricky Donison, the driver from India. First ever Indian driver to podium, able to do that at the Indy Grand Prix weekend on the road course at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. He is spun now in turn number 1. But again, that new pavement from turn 5 all the way over to turn number 8 has been, the drivers who have been here before, touting that as being a big improvement to the racetrack.
Parker Thompson, the driver we were talking about earlier that got around Renus Vicar, or should say Kalen Frederick. Thompson quick in that first practice session. He already goes to the top of the timing and scoring chart. Provisional pole, albeit very early. And as soon as I say that, look who went P1. Oliver Askew, minute 15, 11:69. Do you think we'll see him down where for this qualification session? We saw a minute 13.8. I would imagine minute 13 mid.
I'm just saying like a 12.7. 12.8. I think they'll go a second quicker. Yeah, I would say maybe even low 12s. You never know at this point. Because of the fact that the track is a lot cleaner, it hasn't got that much warmer. It was warm and humid and sticky this morning. I don't think the conditions themselves are going to change enough to make the cars greasy or to take power away from the Mazda power plants. We're going to be fine, I believe, here in terms of horsepower.
Well, I tell you what, just a second there, that Kalen Frederick machine looked like it danced outside of the exit of turn number 1. Right behind him is the number 21 of Renus VK. But you see that Parker Thompson has checked out. There is that two-car battle, well, not really a battle, they're qualifying, but those cars running nose to tail. But it looked like Kalen Frederick had a little incident, or almost incident, in turn number 1.
Two drivers to watch for here, of course, will be the veterans. The two drivers that raced here last year were strong here last year. Parker Thompson was a winner here in Toronto last year. And, of course, Robert McGinnis en route to the Rookie of the Year honors in 2016. Back for a second run here on the streets of Toronto. Those drivers with a little bit of an advantage coming out of the box, no doubt about it. They've been here before. They've raced here before. they have a good feel for it. And again, we talked about the upgrades to the racetrack, the new pavement from 5 to 8, a little bit wider as well in turn number 11, the final corner that leads onto the straightaway. So the track itself, they've made some good improvements, having made the adjustments in 2016. Thompson back to the top of the charts, 113.992. Calvin Ming in the number 22 now goes to second. Alex Barron, the young driver who won here in Indy Lights in 2014 with Bilardi, back with Arms Up Motorsports this weekend. Barron now P4 as Lucas Cole's gone to third, the Pabst Racing number 23. And Jose Sierra, young driver out of Mexico, runner-up the last 2 years in the Mexican F4 NACAM Series, finds himself in P5. David Malukas now going to P2 again. Early in the session, we kind of waste our time, I think, giving you the top 5 because it's always so dynamic through the opening laps.
Well, it keeps you on your toes is what happens. You're just always on your toes trying to keep up with who's doing what because Oliver Askew just went to P1. Minute 13.9.681.
I'm going to say a 12.6. 1:12.6 would be cool. How's that?
That'd be great. I think low 13s, but
all right.
12.6 would be fantastic.
I expect drivers out there, the used tires they started the weekend off with. Of course, they had fresh tires to start the weekend. 4 sets for the entire weekend. They'll get on the throttle again here. The DE Force car drivers working their way by Dev Gore. Dev Gore was the driver for Exclusive Autosport that wasn't able to make it, got delayed coming in on Thursday night. Wasn't able to do the track walk, and I think tough for him. You watch a lot of video, but you really want to get on track, especially at a temp circuit like this, Michael, to be able to find out those little intricacies where you maybe watch the transition between pavement and asphalt, where there could be a bump to set the car up. One of the things about a temporary street circuit is it's not smooth. You're going to have to navigate some bumps. You're going to have to navigate the differences of the asphalt, the concrete. Just so many little characteristics of this track that really make it what it is today.
Watch some of the cars break loose. Devin Wojcik had a handful of his USF 2000 machine down there in turn number 1. And for the last couple of circuits down into turn number 1, I've seen Moises de Oliveira lock them up. So these drivers getting after it. Early stages of qualifying. This, a total of 20 minutes this session. We're already 7 minutes in, 12 minutes remaining. About what point in this session do you think they will put on sticker Coopers?
Well, based on a lap time of around 1:13, I think we're going to see right pretty much halfway through. I would be surprised to see right around the 9 or 10 minute mark. Again, the drivers practiced this morning. They've talked to their teams. They've debriefed. They've selected the adjustments they're going to make the car a little bit better. Of course, they're knowing that the rubber's going to be coming up. They know the grip levels are going to be there. Whatever changes they made, they're just trying to get a feel for what the track's like with the changes. They'll bring the drivers back in, put on fresh Cooper tires, maybe make another adjustment to the race car and head back out.
Not sure what happened with Alex Barron, but Devin Wojcik went flying by as Alex Barron was checked up. I think he had clean racetrack there. He just went by. He's down there in turn number 1. I'm not sure what happened, but was really slow in the final 3 turns of this circuit.
Seen a couple drivers come into pit lane. Lucas Cole's been in. I believe Jose Sierra's been in there. Is the number 36 of Darren Keene, young driver to Boca Raton, Florida. Top kart racer who has worked his way now into USF 2000, running this weekend with Newman Walks Racing. Darren Keene was 10th in the opening session, currently in the 13th spot. Oliver Askew, though, leading the way, 113.288. Parker Thompson, 113.61. David Malukas, the rookie driver who qualified on the pole at Road America in the BN Racing entry. 113.6 for Malukas, 113.9 for Renus DK.
Can I change my guess?
No.
I'll say 12.4.
Oh, yeah, wow.
Man, they're getting after it. This track is really starting to rubber in. 12.4. I'm going to go to 12.4 now.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
All right, we'll give you a do-over.
Yeah, can I have a do-over?
A do-over.
You guys do mulligans in Canada? I'll have a mulligan. I want my do-over.
You know, I still say 12.6, but you're right. It could be a 12.4. You did pick low 13s, I think. Askew's there already, so good for you on that.
That's what I meant. On the used Coopers is where they would be at about a 13.1.
That's what you meant. All right.
That's what I didn't.
Well, next time I'll ask for more of a clarification.
Right. Maybe we'll need clarification. I'll clarify for you, Rob.
That's all right. That's all right.
Askew, Malukas, Thompson, DK, Calvin Ming rounding out your top 5.
Look at the top 2, though, separated by 0.005 of a second. David Malukas has been very impressive. He worked with Victor Franzoni, who won last year here with Arms Up Motorsports, was a top driver in USF 2000. Franzoni helped set the car up for Road America, helped work with young David Malukas as a driver coach. Can't do that here. Victor's at a go-kart race in Texas right now. You can't come and test here in Toronto. This is all David Malukas now. Yeah, guaranteed he got some insight from Victor Franzoni on how to approach this race, but Victor could not set the car up. This is him doing what he can now with the car he's been given.
Let's start thinking about this, and we've done a bunch of sessions right now. And I'm just throwing this out here without really thinking it through, but is this one of the only circuits that they can't really practice on in iRacing? They can't ever come test at. This is one of the few, I mean, St. Pete, well, another one of those,
Yeah.
but
You're flying blind.
you really have to come in and really learn a lot in a short amount of time. Take whatever you learned the year before, but for some of these drivers coming out for the first time, baptism by fire.
Well, and the big thing is, until you've sat in one of these cars, you don't realize how low you sit in the car. It's not like you're driving around in a big car, you can see everything. The walls are taller than you are. Everywhere you go, it's blind corners. You know that, going through turn 1. You can't see the outside of turn number 2. I saw a video of Rinus VeeKay. He was rolling through 1. The yellow flag had just came out. He was already looking through the corner because Corey Enders had spun on the exit. Coming out of the corner, going to the exit point, there's Corey Enders right there. He had to make a big move to the right. Key point of this racetrack is the fact all the corners are blind. You can't see on the other side. So you have to trust that in the corner workers, you have to trust in the flags, and you have to trust in your own visuals as well.
Well, that's one of those situations, right, that we don't normally talk about, that as a race fan, fans are up in the grandstands right now. Watch these drivers when they come by. The top of that wall is about 6-8 inches taller than the top of their head. So they're already down low. They cannot see around those corners, and it's that blind faith. I don't even think drivers think about it. They always assume that the corners will be clear when they get around them, but you have a lot of oh wow moments, though, if you have a car spun or on an outside retaining wall that up against it, you know that if they make contact, you really have to be on your toes at a circuit like this.
You know, Michael, surprised that we haven't seen anyone into pit lane in only 8 more minutes. Maybe with this shorter 20-minute session, we're not going to see any pit stops. It kind of surprises me a little bit. I didn't get a chance, actually, to head over to the staging area for these drivers to see whether or not they've been into pit lane. And here comes Oliver Askew across the line again. Only 7.5 minutes. Maybe they're going to stay out for the entire 20 minutes. As I said, I wasn't able to see if they were on stickers coming out for this session or whether or not they're making adjustments to the car now. This is
Donison and Cole both on pit lane. Donison 1 lap, Cole only turning 4 laps. The rest of these cars, as Rob said, 8-9 laps out there the entire session. 1:13.04.09. So close to a 1:13.1. I said if they don't change, that'd probably be where they'd be. So kind of uncanny how I just throw these numbers out.
You're really impressive, David. Michael?
I'm buying it. I know no one else is.
Hey, you know who's impressive is David Malukas. That's where I was going with that. David Malukas, rookie driver, up top. 1:13.04. Parker Thompson, 1:13.05. 1/100th of a second. Separating first and second. Looks to me like Malukas getting off the throttle a little bit here as the number 10 of Jose Sierra, the young Mexican driver for DE Force Racing, goes by him in turn number 1. Will we see anybody in the pits?
We'll talk about that story, BN Racing, a little bit, a backstory to that with Malukas up at top of the provisional pole.
It's actually a really interesting story. David Malukas, a young driver in karting, BN stands for Bern Nuttall, is actually his engine builder when he raced karts. They decided they were going to go car racing, and they jumped into this USF 2000 program, Michael. They actually bought their own car, set their own team up, and actually staffed the team with karting engineers, guys from the karting ranks coming in to learn this race car. Of course, they were working with Victor Franzoni, as I said, helped them get the car set up a little bit. But essentially, this is a karting team that has just jumped up, bought a race car, bought a hauler, and they're running themselves in USF 2000 and taking full advantage of what they've learned from Victor Franzoni. David Malukas now in the second spot as Parker Thompson just pips him by 0.02 of a second.
20-minute qualifying session. 5 minutes remaining. Will anybody duck onto pit lane? With minute 13 laps, if you're going to duck in and get new stickers, you better do it quick. Or those Cooper tires, you're going to run what you brung. Minute 12, 88.53 now for Oliver Askew on used Cooper tires.
Lap 10 on lap 10.
Wow. What a quicker and quick. It's just a testament to these Cooper tires and how great they are.
112.816. Now Parker Thompson goes P1 by 0.06 of a second. Askew second. VK third. Malukas fourth. Kalen Frederick for the Team Pelfrey number 81. Now in the 5th position. Jose Sierra runs in 6th. Robert McGinnis 7th. Alex Barron 8th. Calvin Ming 9th. And Devin Wojcik in 10th. Thompson for Exclusive Autosport, the Canadian team out of Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. The driver out of Red Deer, Alberta. Former winner here. Defending race winner in Toronto. P1. 4.5 minutes remaining. 112.816, 0.06 of a second quicker.
Red flag.
Red flag. There's a driver,
there
TE Force driver. I want to say that's over. What do you think, Michael? In turn number 7?
Turn 7.
Turn 7. So a driver off in turn 7. That's going to end this session, I would bet, because there's big contact there. You see the rear wing laying off the car.
That's an odd place. Must have swung out in turn number 6, made contact, and then just finally spun. I mean, just to be on the inside of turn number 7 right there. It's the exit, that right-hander at turn number 6, and then you're just flat out running down into turn number 8.
You can see the new pavement we talked about there. Nice and clean, nice and smooth all the way through 5, 6, 7, and 8. But yeah, one of the DE Force drivers is around. Unsure which yet. Trying to see which drivers have worked their way into the pit, and then we'll give you the update. It's either De La Vera, Sierra, or Enders.
Well, Sierra's in pit lane.
There you go. There's one in. We have not yet seen Enders or De La Vera come into pit lane. We'll know which one it is once one of those 2 drivers do make the jump into pit lane. But red flag here with about 3.5 minutes remaining. Michael, I got to think that this may end this session because that driver it's going to take a little bit to clean that car up, even if they have to.
And it's Moises De La Vera.
It is.
That had the contact. Turn number 7. Car number 12. We talked about him locking his brakes up down into turn number 1, really pushing the middle portion of this qualification session. Finds himself the inside retaining wall.
Tough for him, too, as he's going to lose his fast lap race and already has. If you look at the timing and scoring, he had a turn to 1:14.4 that would have put him 12th. He'll lose that time. 1:14.6 his next best time, dropping him down to 13th position. So, again, a red flag ending, or at least stopping. Let's not say ending yet. That has not yet been made official, but the red flag at this point stopping the session here for the Cooper Tires USF 2000 Championship presented by Mazda. Their qualifying run, which comes just 3 hours after their morning session here, where they were able to get on track at 8:35. Parker Thompson, the Canadian driver, your reigning champion here from this event, 0.06 of a second quicker, a 112.816 fast time for Parker Thompson, the young Alberta driver, Saskatchewan team. Michael and Kimberly Duncalf's Exclusive Autosport, the number 90 of Thompson, coming off a rough weekend at Iowa Speedway, but they have a great setup for the tricky, challenging street course here in Toronto.
Checkers out. Session is over.
Here's Michael updating it for you. Parker Thompson will start race number 1 on the pole. The Canadian P1, 112.816. Oliver Askew in second in that number 3. Rinus VeeKay, third in the 21. David Malukas, fourth in the number 79 machine. In the 5th spot, Kalen Frederick for Team Pelfrey. 6th, DE Force driver Jose Sierra, a one-off for Jose at this point, the number 10. Robert McGinnis for Team Pelfrey in 7th. Alex Barron, Calvin Ming, and Devin Wojcik round out your top 10. And Michael, we say it again. 5 different teams in the top 5. The parity, the equality in this USF 2000 program. Thompson for Exclusive Autosport, Askew for Cape Motorsports, VeeKay for Pabst Racing, Malukas for BN Racing, Frederick for Team Pelfrey. You got to go back to 6 DE Force. 6 different teams in the top 6 in USF 2000. Michael, that's qualifying done. They will race actually tomorrow afternoon at noon, but they have their second qualifying bright and early. It'll be a coffee morning for you and I. 8 a.m. qualifying for USF 2000.
What a difference a week makes for Parker Thompson. Was struggling all weekend in Iowa. Now he's up at the top. Has himself a pole.
Simply put, a brand new race team, Exclusive Autosport, went to that 7/8 mile oval at Iowa Speedway with absolutely no data. They rolled in there, tried to learn the racetrack. They made a couple mistakes here and there. They got better throughout the weekend, but when you come in with a clean sheet of paper on a track like that, 130 mile per hour average speed, when the car's not perfect and the drivers don't have confidence in it, it's hard to find more speed. They made a couple minor miscues, but they have data there. now. But they come to a track like this. These guys have been strong before. They were good at St. Petersburg. Exclusive Autosport itself, a top team in Canadian F1600 racing. Parker was able to win both ends of the F1600 race at the Canadian Grand Prix in Montreal. This is a track where they do have a setup where they're going to be able to shine.
How are your sneakers? Because you have to get down to the public or the radio booth to call this Indy Light Series.
Brand
you ready
new.
to go? They're brand new? Why don't you go break them in? Thank you for your
I'll
help.
do that.
Rob Howden, the voice of the USF 2000 Series. He will be alongside Nick Yeoman to call the very first practice session. Been a while. These Indy Lights drivers have waited all day, and they will make their way to the track next. Congratulations. Parker Thompson on the pole for race number 1 of this USF 2000 Series. They'll be back tomorrow morning to qualify for their second race. Race fans, grain farmers of Ontario proud to support the 28,000 barley, corn, oat, and soybean wheat farmers across the province. Whether in our food, fuel, or furniture, every grain brings a natural and sustainable solution to our everyday lives. While visiting Thunder Alley, don't forget to stop by Grain Farmers of Ontario's Growing Connections trailer to learn more about how Ontario grains are fueling our province. Hewlett-Packard Enterprise strives to be the industry's leading provider of hybrid IT built on secure next-generation software-defined infrastructure that will run customers' data centers today, bridge them to multi-cloud environments tomorrow, and enable the emerging, intelligent, and powering campuses, branch, and IoT applications for decades to come. Abrams Towing, proud to be the official towing and recovery provider of the Honda Indy Toronto. Abram Towing been providing service across Ontario since 1984 to become Canada's largest towing and recovery company and provider of motorist and transport services. Abrams Towing is not like all the other guys. At Abrams, big or small, they can tow them all. Find them at abrams.ca. And race fans, Cooper Tire, proud to be the official tire of the Honda Indy Toronto, as well as the official tire of Indy Lights, presented by Cooper Tires, and the Cooper Tires USF 2000 Championship, the cars we just saw. Both racing this weekend at Exhibition Place. Cooper Tires offers tires for your car, truck, and SUV, covering the comfort and performance you should expect from your tire. To find a dealer nearest you, visit coopertire.ca, and you can also follow them on Twitter and Instagram at Team Cooper Tire. Honda Checkered Flag event is on now. Get a $750 lease or finance bonus on almost all 2017 Civic models. Don't miss out on a great deal at the biggest event of the year. Hurry into your local Ontario Honda dealer today to celebrate the over 50 years of racing innovation. See HondaOntario.com for more details. Indy Lights, they are on our docket next. And a quick reminder that Safety Clean, a Clean Harbors company, is the official fluid recycling service company of the Honda Indy Toronto. Safety Clean provides automotive fluid recycling services for the competitors racing here this weekend in Toronto. Safety Clean is the largest refiner of used oil, antifreeze, and cleaning solutions worldwide. Safety Clean encourages all race fans to do their part to properly dispose of their used automotive fluid. Safety Clean is a Clean Harbors company. Help keep Canada green. Need your daily dose of news, sports, and entertainment? Canada's largest daily newspaper offers all that and much more. Visit the Toronto Star booth in Thunder Alley today. Sign up for the summer subscription special to enter a drawing for a chance to win a $200 gas gift card. The news moves fast. Don't miss a day. The Toronto Star, official newspaper of the Honda Indy Toronto. And fans, before you head off to work, before information, visit nerfnitro.com. Race fans, Coca-Cola, proud sponsor of the 2017 Honda Indy, and has been refreshing Canadians for 120 years. Enjoy a delicious Coca-Cola and taste the feeling. And fans, don't forget, you're out here on this Friday and getting yourself ready for race day. Come see the stars and the cars of the Verizon IndyCar Series. Add a paddock pass or upgrade your tickets to grandstand seats. That all happens in Salon 109. So if you enjoy what you're seeing, we would love to see you come back, and well worth getting that paddock pass as well if you'd like to do so before you leave today. Or Race fans, Abrams Towing, proud to be the official towing and recovery provider of the Honda Indy Toronto. Abrams Towing has been providing service across Ontario since 1984 and has become Canada's largest towing and recovery company and provider of motorist and transport services. Abrams Towing is not like all the other guys at Abrams, big or small. We can tow them all. Find them at abrams.ca. And again, we can't recommend enough getting those ticket upgrades. Get yourself a grandstand seat coming up for this Sunday's Honda Indy Toronto, paddock passes, and more. See the stars in the cars of the Verizon IndyCar Series. So much action coming up on race day. You can do that at Salon 109. There you see the point standing. It's been an interesting year for the Indy Lights. Kyle Kaiser, 216 points. 13 points ahead of Matthias Layst. Matthias winning at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in the Freedom 100, and since then has been on a tear. Has done a great job. Shot out of a cannon, it seemed, at Iowa. Just one weekend to go. Colton Herta, Brian Herta's son, third in the point standings. Nico Jamin, currently fourth, and Santia Rutia. He'll be fun to watch. Another driver to keep your eyes on this race weekend. Currently fifth in the points. The Indy Lights Series on track next here. Day number 1 of the Honda Indy Toronto. Well, fans, let's drink up every second of summer. Tim Hortons bringing the drinks like the refreshing Real Fruit Chill. Try the new mixed berry or tropical, each made with a full serving of fruit for a limited time. Come try one at the Tim's Coffee Truck, located right around Honda World. Tim Hortons, and we thank them for being part of this day number 1 and this weekend here at the Honda Indy Toronto. Once again, getting ready to go. Indy Lights practice session. Those drivers have been patiently waiting as the roar of the engines had started. 8 a.m. They had their autograph session. Hopefully you had a chance to meet the future stars of the Verizon IndyCar Series. These Indy Lights drivers, the final rung of the Mazda Road to Indy program. They're on track next. There you see the schedule for the remainder of the day. Pinty Series qualifying 3:35. GT3 Cup Challenge practice at 4:50. Of course, looked up and just missed that Verizon IndyCar Series practice, which happens at 2:15. We got pit stop practice after that. Wrap up the day there. Global MX5 Cup qualifying at 5:35. Fans Featherlight, proud sponsor of IndyCar. Featherlight's all aluminum trailers give you more value for the long haul with new innovations designed into every trailer. Check out what's new in the Featherlight lineup at one of their 200 dealers across the country, or visit fthr.com to find out more. The Helmatro Safety Team is the longest running and most celebrated quick response safety team in all of motorsports. The team is made up of dedicated rescue personnel utilizing Helmatro rescue tools.
Lays to these street courses. He got another shot at it here based on what he already did in St. Petersburg.
We're going to talk more about that talented Brazilian and the hot streak that he is on. First of all, my friend, first time you've been on the air with us since Sunday in Iowa. Sounded a lot better, and that's good news for sure.
I'm probably 90% from where I was from the chest cold that I had. I do give you guys props for kind of sticking with me, because that I couldn't even recognize myself and listening to the audio from the last race at Iowa Speedway. It was a rough weekend for sure, but the racing was fantastic, of course.
And you hung in there, and that was what it was all about, as we all had a lot of fun there at Iowa Speedway. This is a 30-minute practice session for the Indy Lights Series presented by Cooper Tires. It is the usual 14 drivers in the championship. 7 veterans and 7 rookies make up the 2017 Indy Lights championship class this year. Lone practice session, Rob, for these drivers. And, these temporary street circuits, you don't have the luxury of preseason testing. This track gets set up just a couple of weeks or months leading into the event. So for a lot of these drivers, especially those 7 rookies, there's a lot of learning to do here in just 30 minutes.
One of the interesting things as well, Nick, is the fact that not only can these drivers not test here, this is not a track that's actually available on any of the simulation, the store-bought simulations, the iRacing. If you go to a full simulator, a more expensive simulator at Dallara, you are able to do the Toronto course, but otherwise unknown for so many of these drivers. They did a track walk. They've made adjustments to the racetrack as well. We'll talk about that pavement, the new pavement from 5 all the way over to turn number 8. They've widened out turn 11 a little bit. Even for the drivers from last year with track knowledge, it's changed a bit today.
So it's going to be a lot of fun to watch these drivers get up to speed here with just 30 minutes today, and they will go racing on Saturday and Sunday. A lot of points on the line in this championship with 6 races to go. And Rob, you mentioned this driver's name off the top, Matheus Leist. What an unbelievable run he has been on. He won at Iowa Speedway in dominating fashion, using that outside line, that second groove to power his way from 10th starting position to the victory there on that 7/8 of a mile bull ring. But it's not just at Iowa. 3 of the last 4 races he's gone to victory lane. And you look at the type of tracks that Matheus Leist has won at. A small oval, he won at the natural terrain, the elevation changes of Road America, and then at the biggest and best racetrack of them all, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. 3 of the last 4, and in the last 5 races, Rob, Matheus Leist has been on the top 5 in all 5 of those races. That's how you put yourself in a position to win a championship. Just 13 markers back of Kyle Kaiser.
You know, and I think we even go back one more race for Matheus Leist to the road course event at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. He was the fastest driver on the racetrack, turned fast lap in race 1. He got his first Indy Lights podium on race number 2, and then, of course, he wins the Freedom. Then he starts that run. So we're talking 4 races where this kid has been really stepping things up, almost been dominant. And how many times do we talk about it in this program all the way through the Mazda Road to Indy? Once you get that confidence, once you get that momentum, you're hard to stop. And I think everyone knows right now that they need to stop Matheus Leist. As you said, only 5 races left. 7 total, 2 here, 2 at Mid-Ohio, 1 at Gateway, and 1 at Watkins Glen. This kid has a roll right now.
This is an 11-turn, 1.7-mile road course, and with 14 cars, you wouldn't think they'd have a problem spacing each other out a little bit and finding a little room. It's not the biggest road course or street course we visit, but boy, seeing some drivers early on in this practice session all over each other. Look at Nico Jamin made a pass on Dalton Kellett heading to turn number 5. There you see Aaron Tielitz lead that group. He was the one that got around Jamin. Juan Pedrohita and the 26 of Matheus Leist all funneling into turn number 1 as they get up to speed. Got a pair of pit reporters down on pit lane for this practice session. We'll start with Dave first here on the streets of Exhibition Place.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Great to be back here on the streets of Toronto. And for the first time today, we're seeing the sun peek out just a little bit. Big puffy clouds up in the sky. The air temperature 67 degrees. And for those of us up north of the border, that's 19 degrees Celsius. Track temperature at 75 degrees Fahrenheit, 24 degrees Celsius. I expect to be dry this session. We don't know if that's going to happen for the Verizon IndyCar Series practice, which follows the Indy Lights here this afternoon, and certainly on Sunday. But for now, it's dry. That's the good news, Jake Query.
Dave, last night I got to the hotel, and as I always do, I set the thermostat for the room because I like it nice and cool. I don't know Celsius. I only know like freezing and not freezing in terms of Fahrenheit, so I set the room to 33 degrees. So I don't know if you want to come by for a quick steam in the sauna later. I think my room might be a little bit warm. It throws me off every year. So kudos to you. Yeah, kudos to you for the conversion there. You know, look, when talking about the conditions here, it was very, very rainy last night, as David just mentioned, overcast now. But let's talk about sunny outlooks. The outlook is very sunny, certainly for many of the drivers here in this Indy Lights presented by Cooper Tires, and that includes Colton Herta, who I talked to earlier today. Now, he was on the pit stand sitting along with his father, Brian Herta, listening in, learning what he could in the pit stall for Marco Andretti during the practice for the Verizon IndyCar Series. And in the conversation, while I was talking to Colton Herta, I asked him whether he felt he was now ready to make that leap and perhaps next year begin as a rookie as the Verizon IndyCar Series as part of that Mazda Road to Indy. Of course, that's what this latter series is intended to do. He said something very interesting. He said, look, if you win the championship, that's what it's designed to do. You are ready to go. Of course, you have the scholarship money at that point as well. But he did say that if he doesn't win the championship, he is prepared to come back for another year here on this rung of the Mazda Road to Indy Ladder Series and stay within the Indy Lights presented by Cooper Tires. And when you look at other drivers that have done that, Rob Howden, I don't think we have to look any further, for example, than one of those that he's battling for the points championship. Kyle Kaiser. Kyle Kaiser, I think, last year made the decision, instead of perhaps prematurely trying to ascend up into the Verizon IndyCar Series and not be full-time but just take opportunities here and there, he decided instead to go back to Indy Lights, and it's paying off for him. Consistency has been a key for Kyle Kaiser, and I think it's impressive that Colton Herta has the maturity to know, should he not win the points championship, there's no shame in coming back for one more year in Lights.
Yeah, Jake, I think we've seen the maturity of Kyle Kaiser. We've watched him become that rookie racer coming out of Pro Mazda who made some mistakes. We talk about some races where he got into the back of guys, made some little errors. He got into the back of Nelson Piquet here a couple of years ago as well, but he doesn't do that anymore, Nick Yeoman. There's a guy that does not make mistakes. If the car's not perfect, he doesn't push it over the edge. It's the consistency that has allowed Kyle Kaiser to get to the point here in the championship. Yeah, he's got a race win at the Indianapolis Grand Prix, but it's the consistency he's shown, not making mistakes, flawless runs that have allowed him to take this point lead coming into Toronto.
Rob, we've got 10 races in the books, and Kyle Kaiser's finished in the top 6 in all but one of them, one being at the Freedom 100 at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, where he finished 9th. As you mentioned, just one win, but you pair that up with 5 other podium finishes. That's why he's got the points lead, and that's why, despite the hot streak of Matheus Leis, you still have to look at Kyle Kaiser and think, yeah, that guy's not going to make a mistake in the last 6 races.
You know, we give props to as well the fact that he's been able to finish every race to Uncos Racing. That team has engineered a great car for him. They've had no mechanical issues whatsoever, and he's been able to take that car and drive forward. One of the big things I'm watching in this session here is, if we look back to last year, rewind to this event in 2016, Bilardi Auto Racing was absolutely masterful. And of course, with that talented Swedish driver Felix Rosenqvist getting both wins, but Zach Veach was good as well. Bilardi Auto Racing unloaded really well here in 2016. It's not something they've been able to do here in 2017. They struggled in practice. They haven't had that setup. They have not qualified as well either. We've had to see Santi Urrutia come from 11th twice up into 2nd. I think this practice session is going to be very telling to whether or not they have a car that's going to be able to attack here this weekend like it did last year. If Urrutia or Tilitz or Blackstock find themselves in the top 5 or even up to the very top of the charts, I think we're going to see a really good battle with Carlin. If they don't, Carlin could step up and make it happen again.
Just saw the 5 car of Santi Urrutia, as you mentioned. He's made a couple passes down into turn number 3 a couple laps ago. He got around the 98 of Colton Herta, and then he disposed of one of the Carlin Racing machines as well down into the turn number 3 portion of the racetrack. Urrutia, the fastest so far in this practice session. He has turned 7 laps, his quick lap, at a minute 7.588 compared to the Verizon IndyCar Series drivers. We saw them at about a minute 1, a minute 2. So, Rob, I mean, really just 4 or 5 seconds is all the difference between the powerful cars that we see in the Verizon IndyCar Series and these Indy Lights cars, which are no slouch themselves, these Delaras and the Mazda-powered machines. They really get around this racetrack quick.
Well, we got to say big props to the tire, of course. That's the way we get the power down to the road, through Cooper Tires. But these nimble race cars have been so good. With 450 horsepower, they're going to get the extra 50 for push to pass, which I think is going to make for great racing down into turn 3 down Lakeshore Boulevard. The non-offensive, you can't use it to defend, rather, just for offensive moves. Push to pass is going to be so great here. But these cars, so nimble, able to dart the way around. That's why they're showing so well in comparison to the Verizon IndyCar Series Delaras.
Of course, Cooper Tires, one of the biggest partners of this series, is Aaron Tilitz goes P1 at a minute 7.25, and Urrutia takes it right back at a minute 7.141. So, Rob, those 3 drivers for Bilardi Auto Racing, as you talked about, the setups were good here at Toronto. They're backing it up early on in this practice session.
Still really early on, but all 3 of the drivers from Bilardi in the top 5 now. Urrutia P1, Tilitz in 2nd, and Blackstock now to P3. So out of the box, as I had said, if they were able to find that same speed, now it's early. Let's not throw anything out here because we got a long run still in this practice session. But to see them 1, 2, 3 now, those drivers are going to be happy with the cars they're driving around this track.
And 2 of those drivers, Rob, Shelby Blackstock is having a decent season, still trying to find his fitting in this series. But 2 of those drivers, Urrutia and Tilitz, sit 5th and 6th in the standings. They're within striking distance, 51 and 55 points back, but boy, if they don't have a good weekend here at Toronto with 4 races to go, all of a sudden they're going to find themselves behind the 8 ball. So that's a really nice sign for Brian Bilardi's organization.
Starting with Shelby Blackstock, I personally believe he's been one of the big surprises for me, one of the highlights. He's been real racy. We had watched him come into the program with Andretti Autosport. It was a single car team the first year, struggled to find the speed. Of course, that was the year with the brand new car, the new damper system. They just didn't have quite the setup. Of course, Dean Stoneman comes to the team. He's able to pick the speed up. Dalton Kellett was there last year. They had some better runs. Blackstock has just been super racy. Got in there battling. We've seen him racing with Kellett. We've seen him racing hard with guys like Alberico, Matthias Laced in a couple of the events as well. I like what Blackstock done. Telis was strong out of the box, and I think one of the deals he's kind of battling right now is the fact that his expectations after that first race when he scored the win, they've struggled. And I think as a young driver, he's kind of battling the demons that are in within himself, that are wondering why he's not quicker. As I said, Bilardi hasn't offloaded as quickly as they did throughout last year when Zach Veach and Felix Rosenquist were able to win so many races. For me, the guy right now with the bit between his teeth is Santi Urrutia. Runner-up last year in the championship. He has not yet won. And Nick, you've been following him for the last couple of years as well. Here's a kid that does not like to lose races. He's a different kid this year, more relaxed, more jovial, more outgoing with the fans, but you can see the fire burning inside him when he's not winning races. And that happened, I think, at Road America. He was not happy when he wasn't able to win Road America, which he did last year. Urrutia, I think, if he has a car to beat here this weekend, if it's a good race car, he could do the double like Felix did last year.
4 second-place finishes for the driver from Uruguay, Santi Urrutia, this season, and the most recent one, he celebrated doing some donuts on the front stretch of Iowa Speedway, Rob, which I think we all found a little awkward, a little surprising at first. And you talked to him afterwards and said, "Yeah, I thought we had won the race."
He had actually walked into Victory Lane and asked what Matthias Lace's car was doing there. One of the crew members, one of the people who works with him, his PR director, actually had to say to him, "You actually finished second." And I was very surprised how good he was in the interview. He just, he had to laugh it off. He had thought he had won. He said he was going to do donuts. Nobody called him back on the radio. They were packing up and heading to Victory Lane. And, I gave him props. They were pretty darn good burnouts, but for second, maybe not so much.
It was a testament, though, to both those drivers. One, to Matthias Lace, because he was so far out in front at Iowa that Santi Urrutia didn't think that there was another car out there that could possibly be faster than him. And to Urrutia's credit, boy, he charged through the field at Iowa, picking off guys left and right. Towards the end of that race, he showed the maturity of a guy that had saved those Cooper tires, had something for the end of the race. And, again, he was beginning to run down Matthias Lace towards the end of the race. Lace obviously could back up the pace a little bit to save his stuff, but both of those drivers really, really impressive in those 1-2 finishes at Iowa.
Santi went to the outside. Santi went to the inside. He showed a lot of poise as well, trying to get by guys like Colton Herta and Kyle Kaiser. Didn't overdo it. Didn't cook the tires, as you said. Waited to make those moves with better runs out of a corner, not trying to dive deep into the inside into the apex of turn number 3 or down into turn number 1. His run with Dalton Kellett, side by side for 2 or 3 laps to be able to get the job done there, and the finish. I know Davey Hamilton was loving it because it was old school slide job into turn 3, let the car drift up, and nothing Kellett could do was get off the throttle and let it happen. It was just a beautiful pass at Iowa.
I think we're going to see a similar version of some slide jobs here at Toronto, because with some really heavy braking points, some new repaved portions of the racetrack. We saw in the IndyCar session, and we're already seeing here in the Indy Lights as well, a lot of guys sliding around on this racetrack.
When they transition from the asphalt to the concrete in turn number 3, the braking zone at the end of Lakeshore Boulevard, I think that's where you're going to see the slide job, because you get a lot of late braking attempts down in turn number 3, and when that happens, of course, the key is just to lock out that inside of the track. Being told a red flag on track right now, Nick, a potential issue for the number 5, I think it's Santi Urrutia.
Yeah, that's not a good sign for Santi, as we've reached this midway portion of this practice session, and Urrutia is P1. He's turned 11 laps, his fastest at 1:06.788. He is the fastest of the 14 cars. The rest of that rundown looks like this. Kyle Kaiser's second fastest. Aaron Telitz is third. Colton Herta is the 4th fastest driver so far. Neil Alberico rounds out the top 5 as everybody comes to pit lane. Juan Pedrohita is 6th quick. Shelby Blackstock is 7th. Matthias Lace is 8th fastest. Nico Jamin slotted in 9th. 10th is Zachary Clayman DeMello. The rookie Nico DePera was 11th fastest. Dalton Kellett, who we see some work being done to the front of his automobile right now, he's 12th quick. Ryan Norman is 13th, and 14th is Garth Rickards. Rob, this, of course, you're a fellow Canadian. This is a big weekend for race fans here up north, and I know you had a chance to stroll around the paddock and see some of the autograph sessions. There's an atmosphere for this event, and on this Friday, a lot of race fans really enjoying this weekend.
Well, I think you go back to the history of the sport and the all that history we have with Gilles Villeneuve, and then you move to Jacques Villeneuve, Paul Tracy, Scott Goodyear. There's just been a lot of rabid fans in racing here in Canada. You go to any of these major Canadian street races, whether it's Trois Rivières or the Canadian Grand Prix, these guys just love the racing. And we had the USF 2000 Indy Lights autograph sessions. They lined them up. We had probably 30, 40 people in the line every time getting a chance to meet these young drivers. And the lineup for the Verizon IndyCar Series was stacked out the door, and it was probably 100, 200 yards long in both directions. They had them come in on both sides into the one doorway into the Enercare Center. People here in Canada love the racing. And this event, we're into the 31st year right now. When I first started as a journalist, this race was actually just getting rolling 20-something years ago. And I'm telling you, this thing has just been huge for this industry. It's been huge for the city. And to have everybody come into Toronto, and I know they love being here. This is just a great city. It's just a metropolitan area that is so international, so welcoming. And I know everybody here in Toronto loves the fact that you guys dig being here.
They love racing, but they also love their Canadian race car drivers as well. And for those joining us online, or they can see on the big screens around the racetrack, we see some work being done to one of those Canadian drivers, Dalton Kellett, who sits on pit lane, a really talented young man driving for one of the premier names in all of open wheel racing, in Michael Andretti.
Yeah, really impressive. And, you know, I think for Dalton, a couple of great races this year on the ovals. He got third at the Freedom 100 at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and Nick third just last weekend at Iowa Speedway. This kid's really starting to come into his own for Andretti Autosport. Of course, born here in Toronto. Definitely a Canadian favorite here in the Indy Lights program.
We'll talk a little bit more about Dalton Kellett, but how about those Belardi Auto Racing cars, Jake Query? Santi Urrutia first, Aaron Telitz is third, Shelby Blackstock seventh, here with 11 minutes to go in practice.
And if it's a busy practice session or hectic one for Belardi Autosport, the guys aren't showing it. Brian Belardi, I got to say, you're either a great poker player or you guys now know what the heck you're doing, because this is a pretty poised-looking trio of pit stalls during this practice session. But is that me just not knowing what to look for?
No, I think our guys are unbelievably focused. We had a pretty good team meeting after Iowa. That was a difficult one in Iowa, honestly. Santi drove a great race, but we came in here focused. We've always been strong here, and I do like poker.
You know, you could beat me easily. I have no idea how to play it. But look, Santi, you had to feel bad for him because the guy thinks he wins the race and then finds out, wait a minute, you know, Matheus Leist was that far ahead, I guess. But what did he say after that?
He honestly thought he won. The spotters were telling him he was chasing first, so there was a bit of confusion there. He didn't say much. He just kind of put his hands up in the air and says, I can't believe I just did that. It had to be a humbling experience, that's for sure.
In terms of these three guys having a three-car team now, and your team continues to grow, you know, you've been a champion. This is an impressive organization you put together, but do these three have three different setups in terms of what they're able to feed back on the car? And maybe that's to an advantage, is it not, to perhaps have guys that approach the race car and the track different ways?
It can be. This week, we've been very strong in Toronto, so all the cars are identical right now. And we'll start building off that baseline setup that we rolled out of the trailers with and just go from there.
Lastly, the flag came out because of Santi Urrutia and an incident with that 5 car. Do you know what went wrong out there?
He just missed this turn, missed his braking point, looped it. He was on a very good lap there. I think he was trying to get the most he could out of the car.
That's what practice is for, though. We'll let you get back to work. I appreciate it as always.
Yeah, thank you.
Always good to see him. Brian Belardi with Belardi Autosport. Again, Santi Urrutia, they're putting that rear cowling back on. That number 5 machine, you heard Brian say it just missed that turn. They're going to take a look at the rear springs of it and just adjust the balance. But I'll tell you what, Nick, Rob, this is a guy in Brian Belardi. I don't think we can say enough about it. This is somebody who came in with just kind of that dream and getting involved in Indy Lights, had some health issues that he battled back, now looks fit as a fiddle and has built himself a really nice race team and a very, very integral part of the Indy Lights presented by Cooper Tires.
Yeah, it really is. And Dave First, Brian Belardi's organization, a good story, but so is Santi Urrutia, as that Uruguayan driver continues to chase his goal of racing the Verizon IndyCar Series. Might be having some technical issues with Dave First at the moment. Rob, you took a look at timing and scoring and noticed a trend of just how competitive things are right now in this practice session with 8.5 minutes to go.
You know, that's the great thing about this Indy Lights program. Such a quality. There's so many great teams. You look at the top 6 right now, 5 different teams. Of course, Urrutia with Belardi Auto Racing, Kyle Kaiser with Uncos Racing, Telitz again with Belardi. But then you've got Herta for Andretti Steinbrenner. You've got Neil Alberico for Carlin. You've got Juan Pedro Hita with Team Pelfrey. 5 different teams in the top 6. So impressive that you have this many quality operations battling for positions in the top 10.
Just saw Dalton Kellett make a late charge to the inside of turn number 3 to the inside of Garth Rickards. That's one of the best passing points on this entire racetrack, Rob, and boy, it's one of the premier corners in the entire IndyCar or Indy Lights series calendar. That turn 3, we've seen some exciting and some thrilling moments there over the years.
I know you've had at least one thrilling moment.
One big one, yes.
Car flying by you, but you're right. Through the 31 years of this event, it's just that long, huge run down Lakeshore into the hard braking zone. It opens up once you get to the apex, and with our push to pass, those extra 50 horsepower, we're going to see a lot of moves down there. And for me, the great part is if you make that move to the inside, you're going to then transition off the pavement into the concrete, and that allows the driver getting past to check up and do the over-under. That, I think, is what makes the corner so exciting. Then we come out of turn 3 into 4, which tightens everything back up again. It's just such an exciting corner.
Dalton Kellett got a nice strong run heading down to turn number 3. Looks like he was trying to run down his teammate, the 98 of Colton Herta. Actually, he's ahead of Colton Herta right now. But that was a driver I wanted to talk a little bit more about, Rob, because he's going to be a fan favorite driving here in his home country. But it's a young man who has kind of balanced chasing his education as well with trying to attempt to be a professional race car driver.
Yeah, I think Dalton looked at his family and what they've done and the success they've had in business and realized that he wanted to balance it. He's a very intelligent young man, again, born in Toronto. Watched him come through the entire Mazda Road Indy, and I had a chance to watch him come through the karting ranks as well. He got his start karting just north of the city here at Goodwood Kartways, an absolutely iconic and legendary racetrack that's been around for 60 years. But he went to Queen's University, one of the top universities here in Ontario, to take engineering physics, and that's like engineering on steroids, essentially. This kid is uber intelligent, very smart, and I think that he's been able to bring that to the engineering side as well. They don't just change stuff on his race car. He wants to know why. He wants to be able to bring that knowledge that he has. And we've watched him come through USF 2000, into Pro Mazda, now, of course, into his second year of Indy Lights, and he really is starting to flourish. They've got that, of course, his degree is done. He had that dual focus, as you said, now totally focused on racing. And we're really seeing him find a lot more speed and a lot more success this year. On the ovals, of course, he's been unbelievably good. As I said, 3rd at both the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and the Iowa Speedway, but he's actually putting in some really good results on the road courses as well. I think Dalton Kellett will eventually find his way to the Verizon IndyCar Series.
Dalton Kellett with an engineering degree, and I'm with Jake Query. I'm just trying to master the game of poker, so if that tells you anything about where we both stand, the three of us, in terms of education levels. It's awful impressive, and having that type of that degree and that engineering background, Rob, these strategists, these engineers, they love this stuff as it really helps those drivers able to give a little bit more feedback.
Well, you can imagine the vocabulary that he has with his engineer when they can actually sit down and really go over what the car's going to do. We're going to put this damper on. We're going to change this particular rake of the car. Here's what we're doing with ride height. This is what we're going to do with caster camber. He's going to be able to talk on another level than maybe some of the other drivers. Sometimes that could be a hindrance when the driver knows too much. Sometimes it's good to just give him the horse and let him go ride it. But in the end, for him to be able to sit down with his engineer and talk, it just brings things to a brand new level.
Boy, things got a little interesting there through turns 9, 10, and 11 there as Santi Urrutia got up on the back of Garth Rickards, and those two nearly had an issue. Urrutia was able to get underneath and around the 11 car of Garth Rickards as he sits second fastest so far in this practice session. Jake Query, just 4.5 minutes to go here from Exhibition Place.
You know, it's interesting, Nick. You have a good eye because that happened actually right as they were passing by pit road, and I remember it was a year ago while doing an interview on pit road when I can't recall which driver it was, just simply got loose, missed a point, brought out a caution, and you can see everybody was in the middle of the interview. Whoa, wait a minute, it's a practice session after all. So that delicate balance you talk about there with Urrutia and Rickards, you have that delicate balance. Do you push it? As we watch now, Santi Urrutia goes by and he finally got himself that breathing room. But Rickards, boy, I'll tell you what, Colton Herta now is going to try to do the same thing and does so around Rickards as they work their way around this turn area. Herta was able to make a move, but getting a little bit racy for a practice session, which is fun to watch. Another thing wanted to point out, Dave talked about earlier the conditions here. Now suddenly the sun has come out and the skies have opened up just a little bit in terms of that sun peeking through. It was a very overcast morning. The Verizon IndyCar Series practice was completely cloud covered. Now this track is actually completely sun drenched, so we'll see what that means for those Cooper tires late in this session and how they grip. And now that gives the drivers an opportunity to deal with both weather conditions. And speaking of that, every driver is out on the track right now for these final closing minutes in this practice session. It is a completely empty pit road. Urrutia was the last one to go back out. He had brought out, of course, that red flag when he went and just missed a turn. He came in. They made an adjustment to that car. That 5 machine is now back out with the rest of the field in its entirety.
Yeah, Rob, with 3 minutes to go, I mean, this is as bright as I've seen, some of the shots around this racetrack this weekend. That haze and that fog that kind of hung over during the early morning hours is lifted, as Jake talked about. And yes, Sunsplash Day has turned into a nice afternoon here in Toronto.
Well, we've talked about the fact that it was unbelievably humid this morning. It wasn't even that warm, about 68 degrees, but almost 90% humidity. It felt like it was about 85. Humidity's still up, but you're right, that cloud's starting to dissipate a little bit. We got some blue skies coming through. The sun's going to burn things off, and pretty good little Fan Friday. And, one of the great things, I know you haven't got a chance to work your way down to the autograph sessions. One of the great things about the program here for 2017, kids under 12 in free here, I believe all weekend long, I think, at least on Fan Friday as well, but all weekend long. There were hundreds, I think thousands of kids. They were just all over the place. Kids meeting the drivers, getting autographs, to watch all these young kids coming through, just having a blast, meeting these young drivers, smiles on their face. I love to see what the guys here, Jeff Atkinson and his crew, are doing here with his Honda Indy. Just tremendous what they're doing to bring new people into the sport.
Yeah, it is a first-class event. We've known that for many, many years, and I think that's so cool to see because, hey, we were all 7, 8 years old at one point, tooling around these paddocks, and boy, I know it made all of our days back in the day, meeting a race car driver, getting to see these cars up close and personal. So it is very cool, Dave First, with just 90 seconds to go for the race fans, old at heart, and the youngest of fans, the newest and future IndyCar and Indy Lights fans, all making their way out to Exhibition Place here in Toronto.
Yeah, it was about a half-hour autograph session for all of the drivers, including the Verizon IndyCar Series drivers, and we have the ability, we're blessed, guys, to go to most each and every race throughout the course of the season. I have never seen a line of fans like we saw today lined up to get autographs for these guys. It's great to be back in Canada. We all know the Canadians love IndyCar racing, but it was inspiring to see the line of people that had made their way as we see, Nico DePero, guys, just made contact with the outside of turn number 11, and he has come to a rest here just on the other side of pit wall. But it was great to see all the fans that showed up here today to get those autographs.
That's a good pickup there, Dave. First, with a little play-by-play from pit lane as we do see that 31 machine of Nico DePero. Rob Houghton, he's made pretty substantial contact there to the outside wall there through the S's near pit lane.
Kind of reminds me of the contact that Zach Veach made last year while running, I believe, in the second or third position when he was battling at the end of the race. It's just that transition. You come through the left-hander and it goes back through 10 and over through 11. It's just the car, if it steps out on you, as it obviously did for Nico, some pretty significant contact, left front damage. That looks pretty tore up as the Maltro safety crew now rolling onto the scene. Tough one for Nico DePero, P11 to finish off the session. Not that far back, actually, just about 0.8 of a second back, Nick, as less than a second separate your top 12 here in this opening session for Indy Lights.
Yeah, awful tight from 12th on up as DePero, one of the rookie drivers in this series, hops out of that automobile. His session is done, and so is the session for the rest of these drivers as we'll get the red and the checkered flag. Not missing a whole lot of time. We were underneath a minute to go in this practice session anyways, but a tough way for the session to end for Nico DePero. And Rob Houghton, as the checkered flag comes out on this one and only practice session, some pretty interesting names there in the top 5, a lot of championship contenders, and I'll admit a surprise there in the top 3 as well.
Kyle Kaiser up top, 106.399. Santi Urrutia in second. We've got conflicting boards in front of us. It looks to be like Pedrahita might have been up into the third spot, but actually Pedrahita ending up, I believe, P7. But again, looking at that equality, Uncos racing up top, Belardi in second and third, Andretti in fourth, Belardi fifth, sixth is Carlin, and seventh is Team Pelfrey. Every team having at least one driver in that top 7.
So in a pretty impressive session for our points leader, Kyle Kaiser, who again enters this weekend with a 13-point lead over Matthias Lace. He ends this session fastest, and as for Lace, he was down and he was 6th quick in this practice session. So going to be interesting to see those drivers continue to get up to speed. And again, happy to report that Nico DePero is okay after his accident right at the end of the practice session. Coming up next, live from Exhibition Place, it is Verizon IndyCar Series practice. Mark James will join me in the booth. Rob Houghton and Dave First will be pit side. Next time you'll see the Indy Lights cars on track tomorrow morning, bright and early at 8:35 Eastern for qualifying session for race number 1. And then those Indy Lights drivers, they'll go racing tomorrow at 1 o'clock Eastern. Great job by Dave First and Jake Query down on pit lane. For Rob Houghton, I'm Nick Yeoman, live from Exhibition Place. This is the Advanced Auto Parts IndyCar Radio Network.
This is IndyCar Radio on the IMS Radio Network.
Green flag is in the air. Pedro Hita gets shoved down nearly into pit lane. He'll drop to about 6th or 7th. Here comes Ed Jones. Jones to the outside. Michael Young, he'll clear him into turn number 1.
For the final time, our points leader goes around. Ed Jones just got by Dean Stoneman. Now Stoneman starting to take a look to the inside. Further back, Sorrellis battling with Kellen. So it's Jones. Then it's the machine of Stoneman. And third, Shelby Blackstock to Jake Query for the final time.
Each time that Ed Jones and Dean Stoneman have swapped the lead, the other's gotten it back. Now Stoneman's going to try the outside in turn number 3. Side by side into 3. Ed Jones to the bottom. Dean Stoneman to the top. Jones to the bottom line. Nick Yeoman coming at you out of turn number 4.
It may be another one of those thrilling Freedom 100 finishes. Side by side, Ed Jones, Dean Stoneman to the outside. They'll drag race. Stoneman gets him at the line. Stoneman grabs the win of the Freedom 100 by inches over Ed Jones as they go side by side across the yard of bricks.
Stay tuned for more on IndyCar Radio. Verizon IndyCar Series on IndyCar Radio.
Green flag flies and we are underway in Mid-Ohio. Ford A. Newgarden with a drag race in turn number 4. Tony Kanaan tries to get to the inside of these bins. Tony Kanaan gets spun around and gets off in the dirt. Several cars working hard to try to avoid Tony Kanaan. We have a local caution in turn number 4.
Bourdais tries to close in now at the bottom of the keyhole on those fresher reds. Sebastian Bourdais stalking in on Ryan Hunter-Reay. Hunter-Reay trying to hold him up through 3.
Leaders at the start-finish line, or I should say the starting line. It's a side-by-side drag race. Hunter-Reay to the inside. The high side is Sebastian Bourdais. Bourdais will grab the spot into turn number 4.
Joseph Newgarden hits his marks, although there is already, the jack came down. This is going to be a costly stop for Joseph Newgarden.
This is IndyCar Radio on the IMS Radio Network.
Yeah, we're getting ready for Graham Rahal, guys. We've got a bunch of them coming in right here. The big key right now getting in and out because, as you said, those guys that came in earlier were able to pick up a bunch of positions. As we got the leaders going by us right now, we'll send it down to Nick Yeoman in a second as Will Power gets set to come right in. Graham Rahal diving into his pits right now. He goes from reds to a fresh set of blacks. Looks like a good stop for Rahal. Let's go down to Nick Yeoman.
Yeah, it's Will Power who gave up the lead. He was lead first off of pit.
Number 4, bias, goes Jim Rathbun. Okay, Sid.
Pick up Blue Palmer in the northeast turn and follow it around, boys.
We've got him. The crowd knows Rathbun's coming by and he's got no competition. 2 more turns. He's made one of them. There's only 1 turn remaining. Number 4 for Jim Rathbun, who goes into the short chute now. Here comes Roger Ward at the moment over to Jim Shelton.
All right, Jim Rathman just kind of taking it easy here. Boy, I don't know what happened. Roger Ward is really biting fingernails if he could. And here he comes now. He's dropping back considerably. Okay.
Here's the checkered flag for Jim Rathman, the winner of the 44th annual 500-mile race.
IndyCar Radio on the IMS Radio Network.
About 4 seconds is the lead time that he has. Can it hang together for another couple of miles? Oh, this is going to be great finish for Jacques Villeneuve into the number 2 turn.
And Villeneuve smoothly through 2, well off the wall, keeping a fine line down the back straightaway. Larry Henry.
Jacques Villeneuve bringing it down the back straightaway. No traffic in front of him. Cleanly down to the white line. The crowd on their feet cheering Jacques Villeneuve. One more turn to go.
Jacques Villeneuve's crew, they won the pit stop competition, but this is even better. Through 4 smoothly. Jacques Villeneuve heads to the checkered flag, and here's Bob Jenkins.
The checkered flag is waving, and Jacques Villeneuve wins the 1995 Indianapolis 500. The youngest driver in the field at 24 years of age has won at Indianapolis.
The Verizon IndyCar Series on IndyCar Radio. IndyCar Radio on the IMS Radio Network.
Here we are in victory lane for the glorious phase of this most spectacular finish of the 500-mile automobile race. And the pit crew and the men are gathering around Jim Rathman here. Jim has a big ice-cold bottle of milk, and let's talk with him. Just a minute, Jim. Come on. The pit crew is really gathering around him, and Julie Pratt, the queen of the 500 Festival, has put the garland of flowers around his neck, and just a minute he's going to have another drink of that ice-cold milk. Jim? Just a minute, here we are, Jim, right over here. Jim, how do you feel after that most spectacular finish?
Pretty good. What happened to Ward?
He ran out of gas. You and Roger really put on a spectacular finish today. What do you got to say?
Stay tuned for more on IndyCar Radio. From the streets of Toronto, this is the Verizon IndyCar Series on the Advance Auto Parts IndyCar Radio Network.
Honda Indy Toronto Exhibition Place, the venue, a storied event for sure. Some of the great names in open wheel racing have found victory lane here, and 21 drivers have assembled this weekend, hoping to add another chapter in that history of Exhibition Place. 11 turns, 1.7 miles in length. We'll run 85 laps on Sunday. So much to do until we get to that point. this practice session, another tomorrow before we go qualifying, and then, of course, race day on Sunday. I am Mark Jaynes. Welcome to the Firestone broadcast booth on the Advanced Auto Parts IndyCar Radio Network. Happy to be joined by Nick Yeoman in the broadcast booth. And Nick, a fairly uneventful session. Number one, I guess unless you're in the cockpit, because we saw a lot of guys have some issues with rear grip. Some of these turns, of course, very unforgiving, trying to strike the balance. A lot of brake smoke going into a lot of turns. The lone issue, really, Marco Andretti, who was fast until an oil leak shut down his session. But other than that, a lot of work for these drivers to do to find the fast way around this course.
I think this is one of the racetracks, maybe towards the top of the list, Mark, where it's just the most fun to watch these guys try to wrestle those race cars around this 11-turn, 1.7-mile street circuit. With it being a temporary street circuit, you obviously can't test here. So that first practice session, I thought, Mark, worked as a refresher course for a lot of these drivers of getting back up to speed of what this racetrack offers. And because of that, we saw a few minor offs here or there, some drivers testing the runoff areas. And then, as you mentioned, the bumps of street course racing here at Toronto, so pronounced. And I thought we saw some of the coolest shots you'll see all season. Some of those slow motion moments of drivers under braking, bouncing those cars into the corners. Mark, you got to be in tip-top shape to wrestle one of these Verizon IndyCar Series machines around this 11-turn street circuit. And boy, we saw it firsthand this morning, and I think we're going to see it for the rest of this afternoon.
A 45-minute session, back to that after we altered that schedule a little bit for Iowa last weekend. In case you missed it this morning, we were on for the first session. Some alterations to the track. It's changed dramatically over the past couple of years. Construction around the facility necessitated a lot of that. Manitoba Drive from turn 6 to turn 8 has been repaved. Designed to maybe help with drainage a little bit, plus it was in really bad shape. Turn number 5 offers double curbing now, and I think that's designed to be a bit of a deterrent for those who chose to almost go to the left of that curbing 1 year ago. You were eyewitness to that from your perch. Turn 11 widened about 6 feet to make for better racing. And, some patches here and there have been paved, but certainly enough in terms of what data they had from a year ago, Nick. Find out sessions here, because again, with it being a street course, you don't get a test here. So this session and the next one, I think, very, very important. And then you get another one tomorrow before we go qualify.
That's the beauty of street course racing, though. You can make those alterations from year to year. There's not a whole lot you can do to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. It's a 2.5-mile oval, and the shape is the shape. But when you come to a street course race like Toronto, as we see the 21 of J.R. Hildebrand, he might have got a good portion of the wall there exiting turn number 1. Left side of that car, that preferred Freezer Chevrolet, smacked the wall to the outside as he continues on to practice. But yeah, Mark, that's the beauty of street course racing. You can make those alterations. I thought the drivers did a good job a year ago handling the changes through turns 9, 10, and 11 as we drastically redesigned pit entrance and that final portion of the racetrack, and it made for a good race. And as you mentioned, the repave, the curving to the inside of turn 5, always a different curveball, always different challenges facing these drivers, and I think that's what makes IndyCar racing pretty cool.
In the years that I've been coming here, it has been as humid today as I ever remember it. The start of the day, after some showers and storms moved through overnight, cloudy and breezy, but again, humidity levels were noticeable. Over the last hour or so, we have given way to sunshine. To get more specific about the conditions of this session here in Toronto, let's welcome in the sports director of the ABC affiliate in Indianapolis, WRTV6, and also a member of this radio network. Welcome back, Dave Hurst.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to the streets of Toronto, where this morning we saw nothing but overcast skies, and now for this practice session, it's completely different conditions-wise. Full sun, I would describe it up here in Toronto. Air temperature at 70 degrees. That's 21 degrees Celsius, if you're talking about the metric system, if you will. And then the track temperature, that's gone up, Mark Jaynes, some 20 degrees since the practice session for the Indy Lights series. It's now at 97 degrees Fahrenheit, 36 degrees Celsius. It's pretty sticky down here as practice has just begun. practice number 2 to wrap up the day as we look ahead to qualifying tomorrow. The Penske drivers haven't turned a lap yet. I'm located towards pit out. To my left is Will Power. He sits on pit road waiting to go. Helio Castroneves, who was quick in this morning's practice session, he doesn't even have any rubber on the car as of right now. So he remains in the number 3. Of course, Helio, the reigning champion at Iowa just last week. We just saw Takuma Sato exit pit road. So slowly but surely, practice picking up down here on the streets of Toronto, Mark.
Welcome in our other pit reporter. You might not recognize his voice right away if you were listening to us a week ago, because he sounds a lot different. Actually, he's back to normal now. You talk about playing hurt. Nobody exemplified that more than our Rob Howden 1 week ago. Rob, of course, part of the Mazda Road to Indy, and happy to have him with us on the Advanced Auto Parts IndyCar Radio Network throughout the course of this year. Rob, welcome home, I guess, huh?
Yeah, number one, happy to have my voice back. I do appreciate you guys carrying me through Iowa. It was a rough chest cold, and the voice was long gone on Sunday morning. Of course, lots of input of what to do. Thanks to the doctors, of course, at IndyCar Medical for helping me out and getting me through the day. It is a welcome home. I, of course, live just down the road, about an hour and a half in Cambridge, Ontario, very close to this race here in Toronto. I got my start here actually working downtown for a magazine called Performance Racing News when I got into this journalism gig back in 1993. But I'll tell you, the crowd's starting to fill in here, Mark James. People rolling in, of course, the second practice session here for IndyCar. There is an issue on the racetrack right now. We do have a red flag, but let me tell you this. Just before the red flag came out, it was the number 5 of James Hinchcliffe finally heading out onto the racetrack, much to the cheer of the guys down here on pit lane. Hinchcliffe, of course, a lot of pressure here this weekend. He wants to win for the crowd, but again, red flag on the racetrack.
18 to Esteban Gutierrez with an issue, Nick.
Yeah, looks like he has gotten into the tire barriers, or at least came to a stop just shy of it. The Homatro safety team is there. Based on what we can see, doesn't look like there's any damage on the right side of that car or towards the front. We're going to get a replay now, Mark. Yep, got the left side of that car pretty solid to the exit of turn number 1 for the driver from Mexico who jumped onto the IndyCar circuit a handful of races ago, subbing for the injured Sebastian Bourdais. He has had problems, Mark, and laid down some carbon fiber there to the exit of turn 1.
Canada Boulevard, that short little stretch of racetrack there at the exit of Princess Boulevard. Of course, the longest portion of this race course, that long back straightaway, it bends a little bit, Lake Shore Boulevard, and then they'll do that right-hander onto Ontario Drive. And we mentioned Manitoba Drive is the area where most of the repaving has taken place. And again, Nick, we're seeing early on in this session, we're about 8 minutes into it, and what do we see? Tire management being employed right now, because there's only been 12 takers, but we'll put an asterisk on that because Marco has turned 1 lap. Takuma Sato has turned 1 lap. 6 sets of primary tires, 4 sets of alternates, 5 sets of rain tires have been brought for the weekend. And looking at the information Firestone provides in terms of the construction of the compound, it's very, very similar to what they've used in the past. A little bit of increased grip here and there, but all of the tires, the primary, the alternate, and the rain, not a lot of alterations from the tires that they've had in the past.
No, and I think that's the nice thing about street course racing is you don't have to worry about the G-forces and the loads nearly as much as you would on some of the natural terrain road courses where you're really shifting weight from left to right on these race cars, or on the ovals where it is so hard to dial in the perfect setup for those tires. You just want those things to stay on the racetrack here at Toronto, and Firestone's done a really good job, Mark, over the years of bringing competitive tires. 2 different compounds, one with the red sidewall, so those are a little bit more grip, a little bit faster around this racetrack, and then the primaries that you'll see all in black, the 2 tires Firestone's brought this weekend. Well, I should say 3 because they do have rain tires, but we're keeping our fingers crossed that we won't see those at all this weekend.
Couple of reports from pit road. Let's start with Dave.
Just a quick update on J.R. Hildebrand. You mentioned he brushed the wall during that first stint we had in this practice session here this afternoon. He brought it in the number 21 Preferred Freezer Services Chevrolet. And, yep, indeed, on the left side, white-walled those Firestones. In fact, usually you can read the word Firestone pretty easily on those left sides. They just peel them off, and it's pretty smudged. Difficult to even read the word Firestone or see that Firestone logo on the left side. No other damage, though, on the 21, so that's the of good news for Jerry Hildebrand, who had such a great run last weekend at Iowa. Further up pit road, Rob Howden.
Yeah, although he's not on the timing charts with a lap put in, James Hinchcliffe did get one circuit in, put on, of course, the new Firestones, rolled out one lap around and came right into pit lane after the issue we had over in turn number 1 with Esteban Gutierrez. Get a chance to talk here to the Papa Bear at Hinchcliffe. Jeremy Hinchcliffe, you've been here at this event with your son many times. Of course, Atlantic, of course, all the way through the Verizon IndyCar Series. This is a tough one for him. I know that there's a lot of pressure put on him. You have a lot of Canadian sponsors now. How's young James handling things nowadays? He's growing up a little bit, isn't
he? James is frighteningly cool. He's got just a great head on his shoulders. He was 18 months old when he came here to the first race and has been to every one ever since. And after the 500, this is the one he really wants to win most badly.
I know that a couple of years ago there was a lot of pressure on him. He was trying to hide in the bus a little bit. It was kind of overwhelming. We've watched him over the last couple of years, though, really kind of step up and kind of embrace that exposure, that success, and that interest here from Canada.
Yeah, there's no question. After James's big accident, he came back stronger than ever and much more appreciative of just how fortunate he is. He truly is living the dream. He says to me, Dad, doesn't matter how bad my day is, every morning I wake up and say, hey, I drive an IndyCar for a living.
One of the great things is Canada really has embraced him, whether it's working with Petro-Canada or Honda Canada. We've been treated to some amazing commercials on Honda Canada as well. James really has become the favorite son in motorsports here in Canada.
I think, well, certainly one of them. He has such a great sense of humor, and with James, what you see is what you get. I mean, that's really what the kid is like. So the sponsors just love James. He works very hard for them. He knows how important they are to the whole process, and they in return embrace him, and more come on board.
Thank you, Jeremy. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Rob. You bet.
Jeremy Hinchcliffe, the father of James Hinchcliffe. He's been around this racetrack for 31 years.
Tom Hansing waves the green flag. You can hear the cars in the background as Rob is wrapping up his interview. We are back to green flag conditions, and hopefully we'll get an all-skate scenario here. Happy to have with us good friends at Trackside Online. Patrick Steffen, of course, has worked with us in various capacities from time to time over the years, but primarily with Trackside Online, providing great information to fans all throughout the course of the season and off-season, and certainly, especially throughout the course of a race weekend. Patrick, welcome back to Toronto. I don't think any of us really have to get geared up to come here and do this in this city.
No, this is one of my favorites. It's one that's always nice to come to. It's a great city. It's great restaurants. I mean, you're in a. It's just fun and it's fairly easy. I mean, quick train ride from the airport, little trolley to the racetrack every morning from the hotel. So just a lot of fun to be here in Toronto.
No question, this is going to be a challenge. I mean, we have visor cams and onboard cameras and whatnot, access to a multi-screen monitor. And Patrick, even with all of the paving that has been done, and because of the fact that this is, this circuit has some age on it for sure. A lot of characteristics here, and a lot of guys gripping that wheel rather tightly because some of those bumps look like the wheel's going to fly right out of their hands.
I actually ran into Charlie Kimball as I was walking over here from the media center, and he didn't say it exactly like this, but he said it's a big difference between the newly paved sections, which basically gets you from turn 2 all the way to turn 8, and then from there over to basically from turn 8 through to turn 1, it's like a completely different racetrack. And in order to get through the bumps in turn 1, to get across those bumps, get your car to settle and brake there, you got to raise the car up a little bit. But that messes you up for the rest of the track when you'd rather have it down a little lower, get more grip on those smoother corners. So a big compromise here. And Dale Coyne even told me, and his driver just crashed just after turn 1, that turn 1 is what you got to get through here correctly. You got to get the springs and the dampers right to get down under braking through turn 1. If you get that right, then you can work on the rest of the racetrack.
We mentioned Firestone gave the tires primary alternates and whatnot. About the only changes made, we made note of the fact that Firestone has increased the grip in those alternate reds, which again is all part of the tire strategy figuring into the race strategy.
And I love that. I'm a huge fan. Every time we've ever talked about that, I said I want a big delta between the blacks and the reds. I don't think it works right when you can double stint. You can run reds for full stints. If reds are equally as fast for 30 laps laps, that to me is that's not the right red. You want that red to be super fast. I want it to be a second a lap faster for 10 laps, maybe 2 or 3 laps where it's even with the black tires, and then it should just fall off the cliff and you are paying a penalty for keeping them on too long. And I think that's what Firestone's kind of shooting for. They don't want to put a tire out there that makes them look bad. That's why you don't see them go with a tire that falls off too much. But at the same time, for the competition and for strategy, you want that red to be super grippy and also fall off at the end. And I think that's what they're shooting for this weekend.
Patrick Steffen, Trackside Online, joining us here in the booth for this session. And Nick, speaking of the tire strategy, one thing's for sure, the adjustment that the Verizon IndyCar Series officials made to shorten these sessions to 45 minutes, I think it's been a benefit to the fans, because you and I remember, there have been times when we have sat here during a practice session and we have not seen a lot of takers in the first 35 to 40 minutes of a session, or some guys will go out and run a handful of laps and then park it. About everyone maximizing those 45 minutes, or they have been for most of the year, but now all of a sudden here we are past the halfway point and we see some adjustments in that strategy in that first session. People taking a wait and see approach.
Marco Andretti maximizing the grip on those Firestones there into turn number 1 as he bounced his way through that portion of the racetrack. But you're right, it is a good balance of trying to have enough tires here for these drivers to make sure that they can gather all the data that they can during the practice session, but at the same time, Mark, give a little bit of competitive balance. The drivers outside the top 10, the rookies, they all get an extra set. So it's a balancing act, but Firestone and IndyCar, this isn't their first rodeo. They know what they're doing, and it's made for some really competitive and lots of track activity, Mark, during these practice sessions.
He was 12th quick when it appears as though the session has come to an end for Esteban Gutierrez. I say that because he's on pit road with Rob Howden.
Esteban, you were looking pretty good there up on the top dozen drivers on the timesheet. Can you give us an indication of what actually happened on track to bring out that red flag?
Well, I was exploring a different line into turn 1 and to try to find a bit more time over there. So, yeah, I pushed a bit too much, and over the concrete I didn't get a lot of grip, and it was difficult for me to stop the car enough, and yeah, the wall came quite quickly.
Your first time here in Toronto, what are your initial thoughts of the layout? What are your initial thoughts on how it suits your driving style?
Well, it's good, it's fun. I mean, it's quite challenging track because it's quite bumpy. You have the asphalt and then the concrete on the apex of the corners. So that really, I struggle to understand what the car is anticipating or what it's going to be doing. So it's one of the things that I'm adapting to this, right?
And good luck for the rest of the weekend.
Thank you.
Mark Jaynes, tough one, of course, for Esteban. He needs this track time, brand new to this facility. He would love to be back on the racetrack to, again, as he said, explore the limits of this track.
I got a few attaboys for his performance at Iowa Speedway last weekend. First time he spent any extensive time at all ever in his career on an oval after, not getting a chance to test and run the oval at Texas, and seemed to get more comfortable as the race progressed. A couple of moves that probably had some folks scratching their head early in the race, but settled in nicely. And Nick, I don't know that Dale Coyne and company had really high expectation levels, but I think there's one that you always expect of a driver, and you can check that off the list of the fact that they were able to roll that thing back onto the hauler, which was huge for Esteban.
Yeah, that's asking a lot for a rookie driver with no oval experience to go to that 7/8 of a mile bull ring and as you mentioned, keep all 4 corners on it. That is not an easy thing to do, and that racetrack, Lord knows, has bit some of the best drivers that we've seen in the Verizon IndyCar Series over the years. So yeah, I think Esteban Gutierrez has done a really good job, Mark, in that car getting up to speed. Dale Coyne's got an interesting scenario coming up, though, because as much as Esteban would love to stay into that race car, that the normal pilot of that number 18 machine is quickly getting healthy, Patrick Steffen, and we're kind of expecting that process of getting Sebastian Bourdais back in a race car is not going to be in 2018. Seems like it's going to be towards the end of this season.
Yeah, Sebastian Bourdais wants to be in the car at Watkins Glen, and what we're hearing, at least preliminarily, is they might just run 3. So instead of just pulling Esteban Gutierrez out of the car, they'll leave him in it and let Sebastian run a third car. Now, which engineers go where? They're going to shuffle some stuff around, but they might just run 3 cars over at Coin Racing. And that's not the only, we're hearing some other rumors of, Jack Harvey's trying to put together a deal to run one of the last 2 races with Andretti. So we might see a couple extras as we come down towards the end of the season.
And, of course, with Mark Jaynes with the new car design, the new Aero kit debuting next year, the Universal kit, it's kind of the last year for a lot of these parts and pieces, and that always makes for an interesting scenario towards the end of the year where team owners say, hey, we've got the parts, let's go ahead and put a car together and give a driver a chance in a one-off.
Someone was listening to us last weekend, Patrick Stephan, because Nick and I were theorizing at the time about the silly season, and we thought maybe it might be time that it start to heat up, and it wasn't very long after that the story broke about LEO and Team Penske and perhaps their sports car the plans moving forward, and that, of course, the conversation turned to the future of Ganassi Racing and Tony Kanaan and, car counts and teams moving up from the Indy Lights Series and whatnot. So I think perhaps by the time we get to Mid-Ohio, this silly season stuff could be full bore.
Yeah, it could, and emphasis on silly. You mentioned heat up. Some of the stuff is actually just flat out made up, but some on purpose. People plant rumors out there to try and see what the scenarios are. I mean, even from the paddock, they'll deny things later on that they told you straight up front. But a lot of it is it's a speculation right now. But there's going to be some changes. If I'm one of those guys that's sitting down here in top outside the top 15 in points, and I'm not carrying my own sponsor, I would be concerned for next year. I mean, guys like, to be honest, I'm not ripping on anybody, but some guys like Connor Daly have got to start putting some finishes together if they're going to expect to have a ride next year. And that's just the nature of the sport, because you got to remember, there's going to be an Indy Lights champion at least. Yep. You get an Indy Lights champion carrying $1 million plus any personal sponsorship they still might have. Let's just say they can bring their Indy Lights budget back. That's $2 million towards a $5 million budget. They're going to get a good look from a lot of race teams for a full-time ride for next year, and they've got to pay attention to that. So there's more kids coming, and some of these guys that are kind of in the middle ranks here are going to have to get going and get some finishes in to give their teams confidence to bring them back for 2018.
Nick, it's not typical that the front straightaway is a test for suspension pieces and shocks and springs, but I think that's exactly the case here at Toronto this week.
Holy smokes, it has been a lot of fun watching those drivers try to get into yeah. I mean, I can't imagine it's a lot of fun behind the wheel in the cockpit as we see J.R. Hildebrand, one of the first drivers to slap on the alternate red tires in this practice session. Mark, all the teams new for 2017, given an extra set to practice on. But yeah, my goodness, getting into turn 1 down that front straightaway, we are seeing drivers bounce those race cars around this racetrack. And that's not the only bumpy part of the racetrack, Mark. That new curbing that we talked about there in turn number 5, drivers like to put those left side tires right along that curbing to try to shave off the tenths and thousandths of a second. But it is a lot of fun watching these cars work their way down to turn number 1. We've got one car heading that way, Mark. It's J.R. Hildebrand, and you can see the front of that car flex as he tries to get it slowed down and turn to the right to make it onto that back straightaway.
Turn 5, your position, and last year that double curbing is there because some drivers were actually getting as much of the car as they could to the left side of that curbing.
Yeah, we like to call 3 and 4 wide at Indianapolis, maybe at Texas. It's rare you get to call it at Toronto, and we saw it last year as drivers were moving all over the racetrack. You and I have joked about turn 3's kind of always been that chaos corner over the years, that hard right-hander off the long back straightaway, but turn 5 was the spot the last couple years where we've seen a lot of drivers make mistakes, get too wide, and get into the concrete wall to the outside, or, as you mentioned, go too far to the inside, and we've seen 2 or 3 wide, and a lot of carbon fiber and wheel banging through that portion of the racetrack.
After Castroneves, Newgarden, Pagenaud, Dixon, and Rahal were the top 5 when the checkers flew on session number 1. 21 minutes left in this session. Your top 5, Simon Pagenaud, Will Power, Scott Dixon, Graham Rahal, and Takuma Sato as preparations continue for Sunday's Honda Indy Toronto.
Hi, I'm Mario Andretti. To promote the Firehawk Indy 500 tire, Firestone asked me to describe what it feels like to win the world's biggest race on Firestone tires. I would say it feels like vroom, 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 ba-dum, vroom, 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 vroom. And that's pretty much it.
Whatever you drive, drive a Firestone.
Session rolls along, 20 minutes left. Simon Pagenaud was P1. Power, Dixon, Ray Holt, Takuma Sato, the top 5. Kanaan is 6th, Newgarden is 7th. Chilton 8th, Spencer Pickett 9th. Alexander Rossi is 10th. Connor Daly 11th. J.R. Hildebrand is 12th. Ryan Hunter-Ray is 13th. Carlos Munoz 14th. Marco Andretti is 15th. So whatever the issues were with the oil leak, it appears as though they solved those problems. Esteban Gutierrez visited the tire barrier in turn number 1. You heard him say earlier, trying a little different line through there, and it brought it into his session. Then Ed Jones, Hinch, Kimball, Sebastian Saavedra. Let's go back to pit road and Dave first.
An opportunity to catch up with Mike Hull as Scott Dixon remains sitting here on pit road. Third quick so far. They just threw on a set of sticker reds, so we'll see what happens there. Your program here today, it's odd. We're used to seeing the 9 car further down towards pit out. You guys are 5th from pit in. How does that affect what you guys do on race day?
I don't think it really affects it a lot. We're in a great location actually because we're in a break. You know, the racetrack is shaped like the pit lane is shaped like the racetrack. So you're turning all the time here, including in the pit lane. We're all right here.
Some guys aren't. I mean, it's a very odd, as you mentioned, very odd pit lane where it's a bend to the left, then a bend to the right, and then another bend to the left. What makes your pit perhaps a little bit more advantageous? Is it because it's open at the front here?
Well, I don't know. You know, the thing is last year we were 4 or 5 cars back, and we suffered the consequence of that. Last year we got boxed in once, and almost boxed in a second time. So, in actual fact, we might be better off to be where we are today with a break.
Here's the thing, all told for the championship, you guys are still up 8 points. The push, though, is on because I know Iowa, you guys didn't get the points you would have loved to heading out of that racetrack.
I don't know. I think our car, you know, it worked out okay at Iowa. We came away without any scratches, and we did get points. And we feel like Iowa, Phoenix, maybe Gateway, probably be our 3 worst aero racetracks because of the aero kit. Not complaining about that because we raced well at Iowa and we had a good result. Winning a championship is about doing the best you can every day and then adding it up at the end. You have to be leading when the thing's over, not during the racing season. So we've been on both ends of that. We prefer to be on the winning end.
Of course, Scott swept both races here back when we were doing double headers in 2013. Scott, as he takes off now and practice continues here in the streets of Toronto, as I mentioned, swept back here in 2013. A lot of confidence. Of course, Scott's got confidence wherever he goes, but I'm sure he enjoys coming back here in the streets of Toronto.
Well, I don't know. It's just great to be here. It's great to be in Canada. The fans in Canada love motor racing, and we love being here. And the lineage and the history of this racetrack is extraordinary when you think about it, so it's fun to be here.
You guys are a great part of that as well. Good luck this weekend.
Thank you.
Mike Hall, of course, helping call the shots for Scott Dixon. Chip Ganassi Racing has won here 6 times. Not a bad record here, Rob Howden.
Yeah, Dave, we're seeing some drivers head out now for that one shot at the red tires, those alternate Firestones. Elio Castro Neves has got out as well. Will Power, the number 12, just leaving. The driver actually just came in after sampling the reds was J.R. Hildebrand. Of course, a great run for him at Iowa Speedway. He actually scuffed the wall, guys, at the number 21. Left side damage. Hit the tire pretty aggressively, plus has some big scuffs on the rear wheel pod and the side pod of the race car as well. So that red tire run for J.R. Hildebrand did not go the way he wanted, making contact with the wall.
Yeah, we noticed when we went through the timing and scoring, Nick, we were shy a car, and then you and I both came to the realization immediately at the same time that it was Elio Castro Neves, and he's out on Firestone Reds for the first time.
And here's my guess. He was P1 in this morning practice session earlier where everyone was running on the primary black tires. Felt like they gathered as much data as they would like. We're happy with the setup of that race car, not to mention he's got 3 teammates that they can gather data out of. So the first time we see Elio out in this practice session, Mark, it's on the alternate red tires. So that team looks like they were strictly focusing on race setup during practice number 1. And now with 16 minutes to go, Mark Janes, we're looking up and down time and scoring. Looks like about half the field right now has moved on to those alternate red tires, which means they are trimming out, looking for speed for preparations for qualifying tomorrow here in Toronto.
And Dave, first with 15 minutes to go, you say you're seeing a lot of red rings appear on the tires of race cars.
Exactly. Talked earlier, Scott Dixon, he just left his pit stall about 5 minutes ago. He had sticker reds. I'm now in the pit of the number 28 of Ryan Hunter-Reay, another former champion here on the streets of Toronto. They are going to put on a set of sticker reds as well. Looks like Charlie Kimball, the same thing. Tony Kanaan actually started off on sticker reds. So a lot of these guys trying to figure out what they're going to have when they do go to reds come qualifying tomorrow. Rob Howden.
Dave, a little bit of an adjustment actually for Spencer Pigot, the driver who won here a couple of years ago in Indy Lights, and of course en route to winning that championship that allowed him to have the scholarship to move in to the Verizon IndyCar Series courtesy of Mazda. They actually brought him in as well. His turn coming up right now on the red sidewalled Firestones. They made an adjustment though, brought the rear cowl off and actually made a shock change for Spencer Pigot. He was 6th in the morning practice, currently sitting P12. So of course Spencer trying to find a little more speed, whatever changes they made between morning practice and this session here this afternoon, this warmer practice. Obviously some adjustments needing to be made to the Fuzzy's Vodka number 20 machine.
Patrick Steffen, do you theorize, as some of us have, that the story floated last weekend? Not that a guy like him needs any incentive to go out and be competitive. He's had a great year from a qualifying standpoint and a string of top 5 finishes, talking about Elio Castroneves. But it does seem strange that maybe a shadow of doubt cast about his full-time future in the Verizon IndyCar Series, and he quiets the story and his critics by going out finishing P1, the dominant car on the day all in all. And now we see him after P1, after session number 1, just a handful of laps and he's 3rd now.
Yes and no. One, I think that story is a sincere possibility that might be what he's doing next year, but it's not a decided thing. It certainly does give him some extra motivation, but if I would question any part of that, is he's been so close most of the season. Actually, for the last 2 years, he's been close to winning races. He's tied with Scott Dixon coming into this weekend with the most top 10 finishes at 10. He's got 6 top 5 finishes, so he's been there. He just hasn't been right. He just hasn't gotten over the hump here. Now I think you guys talked about this last week. Him getting a win now, and with that piece out there of, hey, maybe he goes sports car racing, but when that might put some motivation into him to try and keep that car up front. And I don't know. To me, to pull him out of an Indy car just seems ridiculous. He is still the top 3 driver in this series, so it'd be a tough one to pull him out of a car.
Well, I mean, to guys like me, he's not old by any stretch. At my age, certainly. But, when compared to the other drivers on that team in terms of age moving forward, there's many aspects of it that don't make sense. But it is, after all, a business, and it's a business that is, forward-thinking in nature. They got younger, obviously, with Joseph Newgarden, Will and Simon, still relatively young, and that too is a factor. But if you get hot, as it appears as though he has, you win yourself that much elusive championship. Now the answer to the question, will it be okay? I finally won that championship. Can I ride off into the sunset and go sports car racing and focus on winning another Indianapolis 500? Or does that solidify him as still a contender week in, week out in open wheel racing?
It would certainly change the leverage considerably. If you're having that conversation with Tim Cindric and Roger Penske, it might change the leverage of, oh man, hey, I just won the championship. Can you really want to, I wouldn't say put me out the pasture, but you really want to move me to a semi-retired state so soon? The crazy thing is, the other big piece of that equation is, Elio top of his game still, but would he rather retire from Penske or go somewhere else for a couple more years? It'd be really hard to not want to retire from Penske Racing. They've taken such good care of their drivers.
I will say this, my opinion, an educated opinion, not fact. Don't have anything to base it on other than following it for a number of years and working in it for a number of years. I find it very hard to believe that you would see him in an Indy car or any car for that matter that was operated and owned and operated by anyone other.
I completely agree. That's the decision he's got to make. Would he leave that team? I don't see that happening. Right. I think he would just have to maybe not be happy with it, but take the offer they give him if that would be the case. But I love the idea of him, winning out or whatever and picking up the championship, putting the pressure back on the team to want to keep him around or go out in the blaze of glory by winning the title.
Yeah, and even though that's not obviously where his career began at this level, but I mean, he is as synonymous with that team as Rick Mears, or if you go to a traditional, stick and ball sport like a Derek Jeter is with the New York Yankees, or a Magic Johnson with the LA Lakers, certainly. So it'll be interesting to watch it unfold. And like I said, winning cures a lot of ills, no matter what. Dave, first, we do know that for sure. An update from Dave on pit road.
Yeah, right now Elio's trying to dial in his machine to get ready for qualifying tomorrow. Sticker reds, remember that was the call earlier. Now they're going to keep on those scuffed reds in his next stint here. But they're making some wholesale changes to the front springs here, the number 3 Hitachi Chevrolet. So the hard work only just begun during this practice session, although the time is ticking. There's no doubt about that, Rob Howden.
Yeah, Dave, same as you, doing some surveying up and down pit lane here right now. Not surprising with a bumpy road course. We're seeing a lot of teams start to really kind of play around a little bit with ride height. I've watched a couple guys try to raise the car up a little bit, watched them pull that front cowl off. We've got some rear camber work as well. Of course, for Simon Pagenaud, driving the DXC Technology black and white Team Penske car here this weekend, P1 on his Firestone red run. They're going to get him back out here to do some scuffed red laps here pretty soon. And again, James Hinchcliffe, he's getting ready, or has actually rolled out here for his sticker red tire lap, and they did exactly the same thing. They had the front and rear cowl off. They were doing ride height adjustments on the front of the number 5 Aero machine for Schmidt-Peterson Motorsports. Currently P15 for Hinchcliffe, but again, as I just roll down here, he has indeed not left Mark James, still here. The red tire sticker Firestone's on the side of that number 5 machine. They're going to drop him down right now and fire him up. Hinchcliffe now ready to go to see what he can do on those reds.
What's going to make it interesting at the start of this race, Patrick, is that it appears as though from what we're seeing, the most pronounced bumps on this racetrack are actually in the preferred line at the setup at turn number 1.
Exactly. It's going to be, the start's going to be real tough. And with the bumps and then the angle of the corner, anybody who tries to go too wide into turn 1 is going to have a problem. I think what we've seen before and what we should see again is that, okay, we'll try and filter into turn 1, and then we're going to get silly going into turn 3. When we get down into that back straightaway and try and funnel into that, and I think that's probably where we're still going to see our big
with
our
red
big
flag condition being brought out. One of the EDC supply machines, I believe that's the 4 of Connor Daly, although maybe the 1 is barely visible to us. We can tell you it's either Munoz or Daly. I think that is actually the 14 of Carlos Munoz. Again, identically liveried cars, and a little difficult to tell apart, but they're pushing him out of harm's way, and we'll see if they can get him restarted. So red flag condition with 7 minutes remaining in this practice session. Pagenaud, Power, Dixon, Rahal, Castro Neves the top 5. Sato, Hunter-Reay, Hildebrand, Chilton, and Kanaan the top 10. Piggott 11th, Newgarden 12th. Rossi, Daly, Hinch the top 15. Munoz, Kimball, and Andretti through positions 18. Gutierrez parked it after 2 laps after some contact with the wall in turn 1. Jones is 20th. Saavedra in for Mikel Alessi this weekend in the 7. Sebastian Saavedra currently 21st as practice continues in preparation for Sunday's Honda Indy Toronto.
The finish line, the victory lap, the trophy. I'm Mario Andretti, and I know there's nothing sweeter than winning an IndyCar race. And that feeling doesn't stop at the finish line. Because when you drive on Firestone tires, the official tire of the Verizon IndyCar Series, you'll realize that you don't need a track to drive like a champion.
Whatever you drive a Firestone.
6 minutes remaining, just like that. 14 pushed out of harm's way, and that gets us back to green flag conditions. Happy to have in the booth with us Patrick Steffen, Trackside Online. So, Patrick, with just a few minutes left in this session, wanted to give you an opportunity again, talk about the staff a little bit, the guys that you have covering most race weekends, and what you have to offer fans of the Verizon IndyCar Series in terms of the information you pass along, not only on the Verizon IndyCar Series, but the newest project is the TSO Ladder.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Trackside Online is presented by Honda Racing. We need to plug our sponsor there.
Sure.
Trackside Online, TSO, as most people know it. We cover the IndyCar Series. We try to have fun with it. It's myself and Steve Wittich do most of the races. Still co-owned by Joe Berkemeyer, who's now working on the TV side of things, in the production side of the TV world. So he's at every race, but doesn't do a lot of writing for us anymore. And he still keeps us afloat from a technology standpoint, thank God, because I don't want to do that. And then. Oh, sorry to hear about this.
Yeah, fellow Reds fan.
Yes, a fellow Reds fan. I'm sorry to hear about that.
You should have mentioned that. Joe and I are Reds fans.
I am well
Neither one of
aware
us talk about it at this point.
I'm well aware of that. I'm a Cardinal fan, and we haven't decided if we're going to talk about it much longer. We're kind of up in the air. So we do IndyCar coverage. We try to have fun with it. We are fans. I like to say we're fans first. We do accurate reporting. We cover the sport, but we're here because we like IndyCar racing. If I didn't like it, I'd stop coming. So we're here because we like to have fun with it. TSO Ladder is how we cover the Mazda Road to Indy. That's kind of Steve Wittich's baby. Right. He's doing all that coverage this weekend. So a lot of fun with that also. And that's just a great way for us to kind of focus on those drivers as they're coming up the ladder, working their way to the IndyCar Series, so we know who they are when they get here. That's, to me, at times was a problem. But now when these guys show up, Ed Jones was not a secret when he came into the Verizon IndyCar Series because of the way the Mazda Road to Indy is structured and things like that these days. And I'm going to tell you what, looking at the timesheet real quick, Mark, one thing I'm noticing is we got a good little mixture of teams up there towards the front, besides the Penske's dominating. The other teams are still playing. We got Andretti's up there. We got the Ed Carpenter Racing drivers up there. And earlier today, James Hinchcliffe was quick over at for Schmidt-Peterson. So the parity outside of the Penske's up front is looking really good. And one last thing, I mentioned Connor Daly earlier. He's doing what he needs to do. He picked up over a second from his practice time earlier today, and I think it's about a second and a half actually. And he's got to do that again in order to catch everybody else, because it looks like the track's picked up a good almost full second now that they've gone out there on the Reds. So I'm guessing that give a quarter of that second to the track getting better and a half a second to the Reds, and that's probably about our delta for the tires for this weekend.
And we referenced earlier all of the people who have come out today, and in the time we spent during the paddock, it was our pleasure and privilege to meet some fans of the Advanced Auto Parts IndyCar Radio Network. Obviously, huge Verizon IndyCar Series fans. From right here, Waterloo, Ontario, Jonathan Ross and his son Alex spent a little quality time with them in the paddock, and trust me, I'll leave it at this. Jonathan informs me he listens to us virtually everywhere, and I'll leave the rest of that up to your imagination. But two dedicated fans for sure. And then, of course, the Triano family from right here on Ontario. They go to Pocono, Watkins Glen, other races every year. Marty, Janice, Merrick, and Parker, great family, and they're here enjoying the entire weekend. So it's always nice, Patrick. You do a lot of hospitality tours. I've done them in the past, but as much as we enjoy covering, the drivers and the series itself, it's always great to get some quality time with fans, and we appreciate their kind words and the fact that they enjoy being a part of our coverage each and every week.
Oh, absolutely. And Marty and his family I met last year doing a tour for IndyCar Nation. That was they're premium members over there, and they win pace car rides and pit tours and all kinds of fun stuff. So I got to meet them last year, and they are fantastic people, and it's just a lot of fun to meet the race fans. Working with the race fans, even if they're brand new fans that a sponsor is bringing in for the weekend, to try and tell them about the series, get them excited. That's tremendously fun for me, frankly.
A charitable donation this weekend is all you needed to get in here. That's huge. It gives a lot of fans an opportunity to come out and enjoy a day full of racing with all the forms of racing that we have here this weekend.
Absolutely. Did you see the number of kids out there?
Yeah, that's great news.
Strollers everywhere, and I in 5 and 6, 7-year-olds, I just love seeing that at the racetrack.
And I saw it look like some school field trips, and I work at a middle school, high school during the off season, and they look to be younger than middle school kids, and that's like herding cats. I mean, having a group of kids that size out here at the racetrack, but they all seem to be having a good time, and we're rolling through the paddock, looking at sports cars and whatnot. That's always a great scene when we can set up the next generation of IndyCar fans. So, Patrick, let's talk about the significance. One more practice session tomorrow at 10. I think we'll see probably a number of qualifying sims at that point. especially the last few minutes of it as time starts to wind down on the session. But again, it all depends on what Mother Nature throws at us tomorrow. We kind of expected rain today. I think the best chance is for the afternoon on Sunday. Tomorrow's supposed to be a pretty good day all in all. So I think if it is, I think we'll see a pretty spirited practice session tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern.
I certainly agree with that. You're going to need to get out there and really get it dialed in. I think you're probably seeing some qualifying sims now, especially from the teams a little farther down the grid that want to make sure they get out of that first round. Getting into the round 2 of the Firestone qualifying is very important here in Toronto.
And again, we talked about that tire management, and we've talked to a couple of crew chiefs so far this weekend, as you have, I'm sure. And, let's face it, I think because of the fact this place can be so unforgiving and can at times be difficult to pass. There's a couple of really good passing zones, but that's about it. It's always interesting to me, the guys, as the checkered flies on this session, the guys that don't get out of the first 2 sessions, they're almost inconsolable. But those that at the very least work their way into the round of 12, they'd like to be in the Fast 6, but they also understand they have a pretty good starting position.
For some of these guys, their weekend is it's make or break whether they get out of that first round. I mean, it's all or nothing. They can't they can't just get stuck starting 17th and 18th, 19th. They've got to be, if they start 19th, the best they can hope for is maybe 12th. If they start 12th, then now they're looking at maybe top 5. It's just a huge difference in trying to go ahead and get through that first round and get up into that second group. And you never know your draw can be a big deal too. You might wind up in the group that's just stacked, and you really don't want that either. So I think for some of these guys out here on the Reds, I'm hoping they found a balance right now that they can use in qualifying tomorrow.
A little added bonus for the fans, some pit stop practice for these teams and drivers, and fans will get an up-close and personal look at just how what initially looks like orchestrated chaos, but it is orchestrated, and when it works right, it pays huge dividends, because, Patrick, in the second set of stops at Iowa Speedway, Helio Castroneves went on to pit road in the second place, and he came out in front of J.R. Hildebrand. His team got him off pit road P1.
Yeah, exactly. That's going to be huge. And I think this is a great addition, by the way, for the fans and for the teams. The drivers cannot go past pit road. So they got to go on pit road every time. They get to make 3 hot stops, or they can stop and hold and then go and launch. It's going to be great practice for getting in and out. It's going to be great for the teams, and it's just a lot of fun. We saw it when they did it down at Texas. The crowds that showed up on pit lane to watch it there were amazing, just to watch pit stop practice. I think it's a great addition to the weekend, and especially when you have an S-shaped pit road, it's certainly going to come in handy for the teams to get some practice directing their guys in and out of the pits.
Well, we can't do what we do without listeners, and you guys can't do what you do without subscribers. It's a great deal considering the information you get. So first of all, let people know how they can get a subscription, the amount that it costs, and typically what they can expect to receive in return for their investment.
$22 for the year for Trackside Online, and we will you can read it online. We will email you all of our updates all day long. You can actually get all the press releases from all the teams and the series, or you can turn that off. That's completely configurable. You can just pick the ones you want and get what you don't. You're going to get fun coverage of the races. We're going to tell you what's going on. We're going to tell you what's happening. We're going to tell you the weather. We're going to tell you where I ate. We're going to tell you the fun stuff tonight. I think me and Steve are going to go see a punk band in downtown Toronto tonight. That's our plan for the evening.
There you go. Okay, well, Patrick, always a pleasure. Enjoy our relationship with you and Joe and Steve, and well done. Thanks for the working relationship that we've developed over the past few years with the folks at Trackside Online. Keep up the great work. We'll have you back again soon.
Mark, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yep, glad to do it. So let's tell you one more time. P1 after this session, Simon Pagino, Power, Dixon, Rahal, Elio the top 5, then Marco, Newgarden, Sato, Hunter Ray, and Hildebrand. Chilton 11th quick, Kanaan 12th quick, Piggott, Rossi, Daly, Hinch, Munoz, Kimball, Gutierrez, Jones, and Saavedra. The director of the Advanced Auto Parts IndyCar Radio Network is Wally Levitt. On-site engineering and production by Rick Evans. Our thanks to Nick Yeoman and Patrick Steffen joining me in the broadcast booth. Great job on pit road by Rob Howden and Dave First. This is Mark Janes inviting you to join us tomorrow morning at 8:35 Eastern. Indy Lights qualifying for race number 1. The next Verizon IndyCar Series practice session, 10 a.m. Eastern. Catch us at all the usual outlets. I'm Mark Janes. So long for now from the Honda Indy Toronto.
race fans. There you go. Drivers out. This is not an extended practice. This is pit stop practice. Series introduced that this year. So you will get an opportunity on this Fan Friday. We hope you're enjoying yourselves, by the way. Get one of those grandstand seats just over the Honda Bridge. You can watch these drivers and these crews do what they do. There's defending race winner Will Power. Crews will come to the attention of their crew. I should say the drivers come to the attention of their crew. And there you see how a pit stop happens. 6 crew members allowed over the wall. You see the fueler, the jackman in the back, and then 4 crew members change tires. Front right tire changer holds their driver, and you see how tight pit out is. For the front right, and that's usually the chief mechanic, will hold that driver or allow them to go. So not only will the front right tire changer have the responsibility of changing the tires, making any adjustment to the wings, but that crew member also will hold that car or send that car depending on the traffic. They won't send them into oncoming traffic. Teammates from Penske Racing, Helio Castroneves, Will Power. What we'll normally see is 18.5 gallons of fuel fed into these cars. That's what a Verizon IndyCar Series car will hold, a Sunoco Racing fuel. And on a good day, we've seen stops in the high 6-second range, 6.8 seconds. So think about that when the driver comes to a stop. And you will see on those LED displays, and we'll keep an eye on Helio, see if we can watch either he or Will Power. That will tell you exactly how long those stops are. Helio Castroneves coming to the attention of his crew. Teammate Will Power directly behind. We have a bad angle there, but you can see the green, and I'm sure you fans have a better vantage point than we do. And there you see Helio Castroneves. What was that? 6.4 seconds, 6.3 seconds, 6.8. Will Power, a little over 5. There's your very own James Hinchcliffe. I believe I saw 6.4 seconds on his LED monitor. Let's see as Hinch rolls out of pit lane. Indeed, 6.4 seconds. So you have to keep in mind that this is one of the most important aspects of the Honda Indy Toronto. And you'll hear the teams, you'll hear the commentators talk about in-laps, out-laps. So when they say you're coming to pit lane next time by, you want that lap to be as clean as humanly possible. The driver will come in and pit. The crew then goes to work. And there you see them send Oakville's own James Hinchcliffe out. But they'll change 4 Firestone Firehawk tires and fill those cars full of Sunoco Racing fuel. 18.5 gallons. That all happens in the blink of an eye, 6 seconds. Then they'll talk about the outlap. They're going out on cold tires. Get as much heat and as quick a lap as you can. No mistakes. And you think about it, 1 second difference on the Honda Indy Toronto race circuit. That's a big gap. 7.1, 6.4, 6.1. That was Power, Castroneves, Scott Dixon. Here comes Hinch back in. 6.2 seconds actually on his way out. So the Aero Schmidt Peterson Motorsports crew doing a great job. There you'll see the 4 tire changers. The jackman's in the back. They'll plug the jack in, jack the car up. The fueler, obviously, it's full of fuel, but the fueler still has to get that fuel probe in the Buckeye. That's what they call the hole that the fuel probe goes into to fill these Verizon IndyCar Series full of fuel. Shot from the visor of TK, just above, actually, on the roll hoop. Boy, you see how TK had his hands full, hitting that curb at the exit of turn number 8. So Will Power, Helio Castroneves, called Scott Dixon. That's his teammate Tony Kanaan. They 3 come to pit lane. Let's see how they do this final time. Again, pit lane speed, 50 miles an hour. They hit that mark, and the crew goes to work. A lot of faith and trust in these crews and their drivers to hit that mark that they pull in on. Crew then changing 4 tires, sending their driver down and away. That's just a great look at one of the most important aspects of race day. There's Scott Dixon. But to change 4 tires and fill a Horizon IndyCar Series machine with 18.5 gallons of fuel in 6.5 seconds, pretty impressive. And the driver going out on those cold tires. And if the driver pits in front of them, their tires will be up to temperature, those who pit in front. So really tough for those drivers to try to keep from losing a position on cold tires as they go back out and battle after these pit stops. They're the Wolf Pack. The crew has nicknamed themselves. Blair Julian on the front right there. Should say front left. There he is, front right. And Scott Dixon done with that practice session. Julian is the chief mechanic for Scott Dixon and the Wolfpack. And as we said, those crew members usually, should say chief mechanics, usually on those front rights, in charge of sending those drivers off of pit lane. And Scott Dixon, who was P3 in that second practice session, is finished with his pit stop practice. Marco Andretti to the attention of his crew. Second group of drivers begin their pit stop practice. And a lot of these teams will spend time throughout the race season practicing these pit stops. I remember when 8 seconds was considered a great stop. Now you see them 6.5 seconds. Quite amazing when you think about all that goes on. Sebastian Saavedra in the cockpit of his car. And that just gives you a great view of this circuit and how tight it is. Just barely hanging on, it looks like, through turn 6. Here's turn 7, now turn number 8. Saavedra locking up that front right. And there you see the entrance to pit lane. That's right before they get to turn number 9. The left-hander, then back to the right-hander of 10. And you kind of get an aspect of that concrete canyon by seeing that in-car camera there. See how quick Saavedra hits those marks. The crews have those air guns. Just one nut holds those Firestone Firehawk tires on. The tire changers will hit that nut. The nut will come off, stay in the gun, the air gun. They then hit a switch that changes rotation of the air gun. So they get that air gun on, take the nut off, pull the tire off, put a new tire on. And then they have to hit that gun, get that tire back on, all happening in 8 seconds. You'll also see a couple of other crew members. One will hold the lollipop. That is the sign that the driver looks for when they come to pit lane. They also will take the air hoses from the driver on the, or I should say the crew member on the driver's right. They'll have to pull that hose in. So once the usually chief mechanic crew member finishes with that stop, they'll throw that air gun out, and the person that holds the lollipop, that stop sign, will pull the air gun back across pit lane. They also have a dead man fuel hose crew member that helps with that fuel probe. That's a great shot. So you see the chief mechanic there. Looks like Saavedra may have stalled the car. They refire Sebastian Saavedra and get him going. believe that was Taylor Keogh on the outside right for Sebastian Saavedra. But back to the dead man, the fuel hose assistant. They hold that fuel hose, help the fueler to take a little of that weight off. They also have an assistant for the crew member that's on the driver's right rear. They'll pull that air hose back out. They're called the rear tire assistant, helping out there. They'll help with the inside tires, getting that to the crew member, and then they'll pull that air hose out. We'll also have one other crew member that has a fire extinguisher to spray a mixture of water and cold fire on the engine cowling. Washes away any fuel that may not make it into the Buckeye. So all in all, 11 crew members make up one stop for these Verizon IndyCar Series drivers. Graham Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan Racing. Graham back down. There's the Princess Gates. You're seeing what the drivers see. So let's take a trip around this 11-turn circuit, the streets of Toronto. Turn 1, short stint to turn 2. And then down Lakeshore, Thunder Alley. And as you can see, flat out, Graham going up through the gears. A few bumps there, then begins to set up as soon as they cross underneath the bridge. Turn number 3, full lock, right-hand turn. Then turn 4, the left-hander, that's turn 5. See that extra curving there we talked about? Right-hander, turn 6. And then the new pavement right here, turn 7. And then the key corner, turn 8. Graham just hitting that curbing. Washes the car over just a bit. 50 miles an hour. Down pit lane comes Graham Rahal to the attention of that Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan crew. See how tough it is. Boy, crews everywhere. There you see the stop sign, the lollipop we were talking about. Allows Graham Rahal to know where his pit box is. And Graham done with his pit stop practice. Takes that $30,000 steering wheel off and hops out the cockpit of his Verizon IndyCar Series Racing Honda. So we hope you fans enjoyed that. A little look at what these crew members do. They'll start breaking the pit box down and wrapping up the day. They'll look at all the tires. They'll take all that data from that practice session. The engineers will talk to the drivers, and they'll figure out how best they want to approach day number 2. And they're done for the day. They'll be back tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock, for their third practice session. Then we qualify. All 21 cars with the Firestone Fast 6. That begins at 2:15. Hopefully you fans will be able to come back out and join us on tomorrow afternoon. But a nice look and a great opportunity for especially fans in the grandstands there in turn number 10 and 11 to see pit stops here for the Verizon IndyCar Series. Well, coming up next, more qualifying. The NASCAR Pinty Series back in action. Who will be quick? Who will hold the pole for the big race tomorrow afternoon? We'll find out next. We welcome you. Hope you're enjoying your day. Day number 1 of the Honda Indy Toronto.